one to you as one of several navigators?
Well, weekly. Well, there's a difference. There's the navigator who does that part, but we also have a disability coordinator in our centers. And during our orientation that we have every Thursday, I come down and I announce that we have the accessibility to a navigator, to a disability coordinator. So they don't have to feel like they're being singled out. They say, okay, just see Les Roberson, and they know what to do.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha. All right. Well, one of the organizations that receives funding from the Community Development Department is Goodwill Industries. Last year, more than 15,000 people with disabilities or vocational disadvantages benefited from Goodwill's Southern California education, job training, and placement services. Disability Forum recently visited Goodwill's Career Resource Center in Los Angeles and looked in on a class in basic skills for people seeking employment: time management, conflict resolution, job retention, and more.
Hello, my name is Randall Rushing. I'm the assistant coordinator for the LA Deaf Services here in LA. We have two programs here. One is PBSA and one called ES. PBSA stands for Personal Vocational Social Adjustment Skills. We focus on a 3-month training for people who are deaf and hard of hearing who have no job experiences. They may have done a lot of volunteers, but they have no paying experience. So they come here to learn how to do different skills to be prepared for jobs. For example, maybe time management. They're used to showing up late. They don't think that if they show up late, it won't affect them. But if we teach them how, the instructor behind me here, Veronica, she will stand there or sit there and watch. If they come in late, she'll rebuke them to make it feel like they're really out of job. They also have stress management, anger management. The anger management will be taught how the client will know how to separate personal and work issues. At home, they'll bring it to work, and they don't know they have to keep it separate. They think it's okay to bring the personal issues and share with other employees, but they realize later that the boss can let them go for that situation. We also have job preparation where we do resume, cover letters, interview skills, grooming for success, and other job preparation skills that we have. That's all included for 3 months. We are funded by Department of Rehab in LA. Also, after the student finishes the courses here in 3 months, they get their certificate, then they transfer to another program which I just explained that ES stands for Employment Services. What I do is I'm a job developer. I do calls for them. If they find something, I go and apply for stocking at the warehouse center. They're sending the resume with the cover letter, and if I get a phone call, I set up an interview. I actually go with them, and I do the interpreting for them. After they finish, if they've been hired, I work with them for 3 months, what's called 90-day job retention. If there's any problems between the client and the employee, I show up to help resolve the issues, and I interpret for everything. If they have a little meeting that's happening, I show up to interpret for that. If there's an argument going on, I show up and I interpret to make sure they resolve everything. That's part of the service we have to provide here. After the 3 months is finished, they're on their own. They continue hopefully for success for the future. Thank you.
Sue, you have a good deal of familiarity with the Goodwill program. Why don't you talk about it for a couple of minutes?
Goodwill was one of the first agencies I was involved with when I started with the city almost 10 years ago now, with the Community Development Department. And Goodwill, besides serving deaf individuals through their deaf services program, they also maintain and operate a work source center called the Metro North Work Source Center. And in that particular facility, anyone who is displaced or older worker or an individual who may have either a spotty work history or is just plain unemployed can go into that center just like any of our other WorkSource centers to receive assistance. Now, some of the things that occur in the one-stop system or the WorkSource centers is we have computers, we have fax machines, we have TTY machines for anyone who may need them. The centers have been both physically and programmatically made accessible through a very committed program that the community department committed to over 10 years ago. But in terms of services, an individual can go in on their own and look for work without any type of case management, or they can get additional assistance through case management and also through our business services representatives for placement services. Unlike the Deaf Services Program, we do follow the clients for a year after they're enrolled in the programs. And if a client should start a job, lose a job, they certainly can come back to receive additional services. So our main purpose is to keep people employed. And we do this through a vast majority of partners that work with us as well. Department of Rehab is one of our partners. And I would suggest that anyone who is looking for employment that has a disability open a case with the Department of Rehabilitation. We also have partnership with the community colleges and the universities. I, in turn, would suggest that individuals participate with their disabled student union that is located on campus. We also have Department of Aging as a partner who has subsidized part-time employment for anyone who is 55 or older and who has been unemployed and is low income. EDD is, of course, the biggest partner that we have, and we do provide Cal Jobs, job search in our centers, as well as other forms, Monster.com and all of that.
And we're talking about some of the tools, if I may. Don't
Well,
forget
let's-
JAWS.
All right, we'll get back to that because you've given me a good lead-in to the next topic. But
Good.
the Department on Disability, in conjunction with the Emergency Management Department and with technical support from CityView, produced a series of public service announcements aimed at persons with disabilities and their families. Please watch.
In the case of a disaster, you need to be able to communicate with emergency personnel and your support network, as well as to stay current with the latest information. Make sure all batteries are in good condition. Keep an extra supply of batteries on hand for your hearing aids or cochlear implants in your emergency supply kit. Rotate them regularly. Install both audible and visual smoke alarms, where at least one should be battery operated. And test them regularly. In case you're left without your hearing aid or cochlear implant, plan how to communicate with emergency personnel. Store pens, pencils, and a small notebook with your emergency supplies. Pre-printed messages with your medical conditions or allergies are also a good idea. In order to get emergency reports, determine which broadcast stations provide continuous news coverage that's signed or captioned. Only you know what can prepare and assist you and your family in case of a disaster. Are you prepared? For additional information, please contact the Department on Disability or the Emergency Management Department by calling the numbers on the screen or by dialing 311.
we're back on Disability Forum with Susan Quigley from the Community Development Department and Les Roberson, Disability Program Navigator, Community Centers, Inc. Let's talk about the program that I guess has gotten the most national play or discussion over the past few years, and that's the Ticket to Work program. Les, why don't you tell us a bit about the Ticket to Work program and something about its history and all the important information?
Oh, I'd love to. Ticket to Work program has been around since 1999, Clinton administration, and it's basically saying, listen, our citizens should be able to go back to work without the worry of losing their disability, losing their insurance, and losing all of their benefits at one time. Some people are not ready to go right back to work, and that's what the ticket provides, and easily. So the way it works is you come to an EN or you contact Social Security.
That's an employment network.
As an employment network, yes, of course. As an employment network, there's training that you could receive from Social Security. Maximus is the consultant with Social Security. So we've got some good rules and regulations because they're going to be impacting the lives of people coming back sick, upset, disabled, everything, but really tired of being at home, or just not enough work for them, not enough income, and they just want to become part of society again. I actually sat on the sidelines for 3 years myself with heart failure. They told me I'd had heart failure, and my biggest fear was, am I going to lose my cardiologist? What if I cannot make it? That little self-doubt. And the EN explains this to you, that there are some rules, there are some ways to go back to work, and that's how we do it. We continue to improve the networks and the communication with Social Security and with the disabled, and get them back to work if we can. We're in a tough economy right now, of course.
So anyone who has decided they are tired of staying home, do they have to request the ticket from Social Security, or is it automatically?
Well, Social Security, as you said, is one of the big national things right now, national attention right now. They are going out. But if you haven't received a ticket, you can contact Maximus to see if you're eligible for a ticket. There's SSI and there's SSDI, and the difference is SSI is Social Security income, SSDI is Social Security disability income, where you've paid into FICA. So us on disability income, we think we deserve a little bit more.
So I have my ticket, I walk through the door of one of the two employment networks, and then I can expect to sit down with someone and to perhaps get the training I need to go back to work?
Yes, of course. At my center is me, Les Roberson, and in the Hollywood workforce is Margot Scoble. And we have everything that you need, all the stuff that help we can give you.
Now, just so this isn't a walk in the park, one of the criticisms that I've heard over the years as an advocate in the disability field is that the training sometimes does not necessarily prepare someone for employment in an area that they are interested in. What has been done over the last few years to perhaps bridge the gap between theory and practice?
Well, that's a good question. First off, you have to train the ENs. So there's a weekly training that we listen to on Tuesday training, Tuesday ticket training. We do that. And you have to understand the economy's changed. And you have to write up an IWP, an individual work plan. So it has to be something realistic when you're going back to work. For example, if you've been amputated and you worked in the racing industry, it may be a little difficult to get around. So they ask you to be realistic with the change in work. With the change in the economy, green jobs are going to be some of the bigger things. So we're doing that with CDD, of course. So we have to let's be realistic.
Healthcare.
Healthcare.
Is another one. Infrastructure. I think it's important, my thought is, with the Ticket to Work, is if you're serious about going back to work, you really need to do some labor market investigation, which you can do through our work source centers, and look at the trends towards employment before setting your goals. And I just wanted to clarify one thing, Mitch. There was a wealth of tickets that went out in the mail early on with Ticket to Work. A lot of people, I think, discarded those tickets. Just because they never used them doesn't mean that they can't request another one and be able to take advantage of the employment networks. Generally speaking, most employment networks do not go through the local workforce investment areas. We are fortunate in the city of Los Angeles to have two centers that are serving as employment networks, and in the same respect, having the two navigators who are connected with the Ticket to Work program.
I think that's been key
Yeah,
to the success that we have.
Yes, in terms of the success, it also ensures that you have someone who helps you navigate the Social Security Administration system, the EDD, the Medicare, all of these different systems. It helps individuals navigate the system to be successful, where in the past that was not available.
Are there any national statistics yet from Social Security on the number of persons with disabilities, or perhaps not, just persons generally, who have come through the Ticket to Work program and found employment?
Not yet, no, because since they have retooled, maybe with the census coming, redoing the census, maybe we'll see them then, but not yet, because as you said, there were some things that needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the first year, if I remember correctly, Mitch, 16,000 tickets were sent out, and less than 1% were redeemed.
That's what I remember.
And so I haven't been as on top of the ticket program because it's run independently. However, I do think that their numbers have improved. The other thing is you want to be able to follow individuals for more than 30, 60 days. So to get that employment verification information back through EDD, for instance, it's almost a lapse of six months in order to get that information gathered. So I haven't seen latest statistics, but my sense is that they are improving, and this is with the downturn in the economy right now, this is a wonderful time to do it.
And I think it should be pointed out, the Bureau of Labor Statistics just began to keep statistics on unemployment of persons with disabilities. And a lot of us who have been involved in this area for a long time have really cheered this development, because it's about time that we find out what the actual rate of unemployment among our population is. Les, why don't you give some phone numbers? We have a lot of resources out there for folks.
Okay, we've got, first off, our website, EDD. It's the easy one. It's edd.ca.gov. We've got our telephone number for the Work Source Centers, 213-744-7333, and they'll let you know where your local work source is, and the TTY number is 213-744-9395.
And Les, that's for both the Work Source Centers and the Youth One Source Centers.
Okay, and you can also access the website, www.lacity.org/WIB. And Maximus is simply a telephone number, 1-866-949-3687. And you can reach your EN through your work source information or the Maximus phone number.
Very good. And I want to thank Susan Quigley, Workforce Development Analyst with the Community Development Department, and Les Roberson, Disability Program Navigator, Community Centers, Inc., for being with us on Disability Forum. Again, if you would like information about the Department on Disability, please call 213-485-6334-VOICE or 213-485-6655 TTY, or email the department at www.lacity.org/DOD. Also, if you have a question or comment about Disability Forum, please email me directly at Mitch, M-I-T-C-H, .Pomerantz, P-O-M-E-R-A-N-T-Z, @earthlink.net. This has been Disability Forum with your host, Mitch Pomerantz. Until next time, thanks for watching and take care.
Good morning. Emergency Preparedness Patrol. Is your family prepared for disaster?
Mom!
Emergencies can strike at any time. That's why it's important to have a family emergency plan in case you're separated during a disaster. Have an emergency supply kit ready with non-perishable food items such as dry goods, canned goods, and water. Don't forget extra medication for elderly family members. And extra pet food, too. Include a first aid kit, a battery-operated radio, extra batteries, and, of course, a waterproof flashlight. And to reduce the risk of serious injury, fasten all freestanding items securely, including water heaters. This family gets a passing grade for being prepared. Emergency preparedness. It's an LA thing.
LA City View Channel 35. Your city, your channel.
It's not on? Not on. Not on. We're on? Are we on? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Los Angeles City Council Chambers. This meeting of Friday, April 30th, 2010. Council meets 3 times a week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays, and all meetings are open to the public. For those who cannot make it to the council meetings are televised via cable or on Channel 35, or can be viewed by visiting our website at www.lacity.org. Audio meetings is available also on council phone by dialing 213-621-CITY. I am Councilman Greg Smith. I'm acting on behalf of Mr. Garcetti, who will be here shortly. We're asking all members to please come to the council. That would be council members Alarcon, Cardenas, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, and Wesson. And Garcetti will be here shortly. Would they please come to the chambers? And I'd like to be anyone who would like to be heard on an item on today's agenda or a general public comment for those items not on the agenda but are under our jurisdiction can do so by filling out a speaker card in the rear of the chambers and presenting it to the Sergeant at Arms. I'd like to thank Council Members Parks, Reyes, Rosendahl, Koretz for being here on time. We have Friday morning presentations will begin shortly, but this is a quorum call for all members. Please report at the chambers. And Wesson and Smith are here. 30th, 2010. Council members are Councilmember Alarcon, Cardenas, Krikorian, and Garcetti. Please come to the chamber. We are still 3 members short of a quorum, but we will begin with the special presentations. I'd like to call Councilmember Wesson to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. As you know, today is one of my favorite days, pet adoption. Are we going to be able to put this, are we going to be able to put him on the screen so he can be seen? There you go. Now the lights are on. Anyway, again, today is one of my favorite days at council. It's Pet Adoption or Doggy Adoption Friday, and I have in my one hand a 2-month-old Chihuahua named Stuart Little, and I wonder how they came up with that name. Stuart is one of the hundreds of animals that we search desperately to try to find them a home. If you ever wondered what unconditional love is, then why don't you go to one of our 6 shelters and adopt a puppy or an older dog or a bigger dog, one like Stuart. We do this, and I know Mr. Koretz also does Feline Friday, where he tries to find owners for our kittens and cats. We do this because, unfortunately, we cannot afford to keep the dogs and cats in the shelter forever. So, in order to ensure their survival, we need to ask the public to help us out and to come and get one of these companion animals and make he or she a part of your family. Now, I had a big spiel where related to Stuart, and I felt optimistic that we would find an owner for him. In fact, if I wasn't already at the limit and didn't fear that my wife would evict me from my own home, then Stuart would have been adopted by me. But as we go through these trying budget times, difficult times, I think that it's appropriate that as a gift, I give the man who is truly stressed through this period, the chair of budget, Bernard Parks, I think that I give you, for those of you that don't know, I have a running joke with Mr. Parks. He is allergic to anything that's not a police shepherd, I think. Anyway, I'm glad that the entire Los Angeles Police Department doesn't feel that way, because before, Mr. President, I could come before you, give me a kiss, and present Stuart, we've got one of our great police sergeants, Sergeant Joseph A. Coons, has already adopted Stuart. So our 100% adoption rate for dogs is still in place, but those of you at Channel 35, and even those of you in this building, don't despair. We have 6 shelters, and there are hundreds of companion animals, just like Stuart, looking for a home. Stuart was one of the lucky ones. He lasted about 5 minutes in the back. So I'm going to take Stuart back, where we will find his new owner, Sergeant Coons. Obviously, Sergeant Coons had some concerns where related to security at his home, so he brought in this vicious attack dog to protect him and his family. So, Mr. President and members, thank you very much. And again, our 100% adoption rate is still intact. And I want to thank all of the people of Los Angeles who've come down here and adopted one of our animals. Thank you all very much. And today's going to be a good day. Take a picture.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. Make sure Sergeant Coons does not apply for the K-9 unit, though. With that, we'll call for a second presentation, Councilmember Reyes. All right, the next one's not ready, so we will take a 5-minute break. We're still calling, thank you for Mr. Alarcon for arriving now. We still need Mr. Cardenas, Krikorian, and Garcetti is still at a press conference. He'll be shortly. So if Mr. Cardenas and Krikorian could please join us, we would then have a quorum. Continue with presentations. Mr. Krikorian is now joining us. So, Mr. Krikorian, the microphone is yours. Correct.
Mr. Chair and members. Today we celebrate an extraordinary and inspiring true story.
Ladies and gentlemen, could we please have quiet in the chamber so they can make the presentation?
This story shows how human beings in the face of utterly heartbreaking circumstances can still build something of remarkable value and generosity of spirit. It began with a promise from a father to his dying son. In 1973, a high school student named T.J. Martell was battling leukemia. He asked his father, music industry executive Tony Martell, to raise $1 million for cancer research so that no one else would have to go through what he was going through. Although he had no fundraising experience, Tony agreed. 2 years later, T.J. died at the age of 19, and as Tony explains today, that put my promise in cement. Soon after, Tony was joined by many legendary musician friends like Ella Fitzgerald, Benny Goodman, and Duke Ellington to hold a fundraiser at Buddy Rich's nightclub in New York. They raised $50,000, and the T.J. Martell Foundation was born. Over the subsequent years, hundreds of volunteers have worked passionately and with tremendous dedication to raise more than $240 million for leukemia, cancer, and AIDS research. The T.J. Martell Foundation has established a history of astonishing achievement and a glorious reputation for innovation and fundraising and the research it supports. The T.J. Martell Foundation funds innovative early-stage cancer and AIDS research that leads to practical, effective treatments in the near term. The foundation provides funds for highly targeted research projects at leading medical and scientific institutions. And furthermore, the foundation is dedicated to funding and supporting the efforts of scientists and physicians engaged in the global battle against multiple forms of cancer and AIDS. In addition to fighting these diseases, they also work to improve the lives of cancer and pediatric AIDS patients and their families. This foundation expanded its fundraising efforts to Los Angeles in 1983 and has met with tremendous success. For 25 years, this foundation has held local fundraising events, including a wine dinner, golf tournament, tennis event, concerts, and action sports events, and has raised over $25 million in Los Angeles for medical research. Locally, we are proud to support Children's Hospital LA, which conducts the only leukemia and cancer research for infants, children, and adolescents for the T.J. Martell Foundation. Coming up this Sunday, May 2nd, the Foundation will be holding a Family Day fundraiser at CBS Radford Studios in Studio City from 12 to 4 p.m. There'll be live music, amazing rides, slides, bouncers, a rock wall, video game truck, carnival games, face painting, food, and so much more. There'll be special guest appearances by the legendary Dick Van Dyke and SpongeBob. To purchase tickets to this fundraising event, go to tjmartellfoundation.org/LA Family Day or call 310-315-0600. And today we're joined by two representatives from this terrific foundation, Lisa Ferris and Dick Gary, who will now tell us more about the foundation. So in honor of T.J. Martell and all the tremendous charitable work of this organization, in honor of this Family Day this Sunday, and in gratitude for all the life-saving work this foundation has helped support and accomplish over the years, we will be declaring May 2nd, 2010, T.J. Martell Day in the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you very much, Councilman Paul Koretz. We want to thank you very much, and Jeff Evenstein in your office. We also want to thank West Valley LAPD Commanding Officer John Egan and Officer Robert Trulick for the tremendous help that they have given us in making this possible. We are really humbled and gratified by this amazing honor, and Tony Martell, TJ's father, is ecstatic. He's in his 80s now and not traveling. He lives in New York, but he is so honored and gratified by this wonderful proclamation. We sincerely thank you. And, you know, a lot of people, and they're trying to explain something that they want to make simple, they say, we're not trying to cure cancer. Well, we are. and we are making some important strides. TJ Martell, the money that we create, that we are fortunate in raising, is granted to 8 of the most important, prestigious, and successful cancer research hospitals and facilities in the country. We have a team of very respected medical advisors who evaluate all the grants and then award them to those who they feel have the greatest promise of success. Our research has resulted partially in the first chemo cocktail, which has proven quite successful in the treatment of many forms of cancer. And where we're really proudest, I think, is in the area of pediatric cancer and the work we've done with Children's Hospital Los Angeles. In the last 15 years, the survival rate from pediatric cancer has gone from 15% to 80%. But obviously, we're not there yet, and that's why we're here, to keep raising money, to keep trying to support the research. Basically, research buys money. I thank you. Yeah, okay, that's good. Thank you very much. You really appreciate everything you've done. And we would like to invite all the councilors.
Good morning. I'm John Egan. I'm the commanding officer of LAPD's West Valley area. I want to thank Councilmember Koretz and the members of the council for making May 2nd TJ Martell Day. We were approached about a year ago to become involved in this wonderful charity, and officers at our station were very, very interested and committed to doing it. We really wanted to be part of this. We think it's a very, very worthwhile effort, as do most of you, or all of you, I should say. And I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here, and I want to thank the members of the TJ Martell Foundation for offering LAPD the opportunity to become involved in something that will change so many young people's lives. Thank you very much.
Continue with presentations. Councilmember Reyes.
Gracias. Good morning, council members. Good morning, Los Angeles. I'd like to welcome you today to a special event. The organizers, El Comité Cultural José de la Cruz Mena, and members Francisco Correa, Yolanda Gutierrez, Lester Torres, Marvin Bendaña, Rivas, Camilo Astacio, and Mabel Rivas. And also have to give a special welcome to Consul General José Alberto Acevedo. Let's give a round of applause, please. Welcome. Colleagues, Nicaraguans have immigrated to the United States in small groups since the early 1900s, but their presence was especially felt over the last 3 decades in the 20th century. The Nicaraguan community has concentrated in 3 major urban areas: Miami, New York City, and Los Angeles. Approximately 400,000 Nicaraguenses have made the United States their home. Many waves of immigration have taken place within the last century, but the catalyst for the last wave was the Civil War. During the 1970 uprising, many families left Nicaragua. The Sandinista Revolution during the 1980s brought a wave of Nicaraguenses refugees into the U.S. and the largest wave of documented immigrants. Over 62% of the total documented immigration from 1979 to 1988 occurred after 1984. Another motive for immigration during the 80s was the Contra War. Like the Europeans in the turn of the century, we had Italians, you had Irish, Polish, you had waves of European immigrants coming to the shores of this great country. We also have had that experience in the last 30, 40 years. The immigrants came to escape poverty, and many have opened small businesses, restaurants, and have been involved in many local neighborhood projects. As you see today, and as you will see later this morning, Los Angeles is prideful of its neighborhoods, and most importantly, of its various blends of cultural diversity. The Nicaraguan community is and has always been a part of the city of Los Angeles. So I was very surprised that this will be the first time in our city's history that we recognize this special community. Therefore, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to declare May 3rd, El Día del Nicaragüense. I'd like to call up and present, who's with me, Consul José Alberto Acevedo, to share a few words. Por favor.
Thank you. Muchas gracias por estar dándonos este reconocimiento a toda la comunidad nicaragüense.
Thank you very much for giving us this honor to the whole community from Nicaragua.
Que con nuestra pequeña contribución aportamos grandemente al desarrollo de este país.
And we feel that with our very small contribution, we provide a great deal to this incredible nation.
Me hago acompañar de mi comunidad, que es la que responde por esta situación.
My community is here with me, and they're the ones who are responsible for this sharing.
Y además quiero darles las gracias por el respaldo que ha tenido todos los emigrantes con la situación que está pasando en Arizona.
Also, I would like to thank you for all the support that you provided to all the immigrants that are experiencing the situation that's currently happening in Arizona.
Muchas gracias por este gran día que tenemos los nicaragüenses ahora en Los Ángeles, California.
Thank you very much for this incredible day that has been declared the day for the Nicaraguenses here in Los Angeles, California. Thank you.
Okay, ¿se me permite? It is my honor to offer this token of our congratulations in celebration of the people, culture, and heritage of Nicaragua and the contributions to the fabric that is the city of Los Angeles. Felicidades, and I'd like to ask Mabel Rivas to share a few words with us. Consul, muchas gracias y felicidades. Take a picture.
Muchas gracias.
Mabel, and this is for you.
¡Viva Nicaragua! ¡Viva!
Gracias al Concilio del Condado de Los Ángeles, a las diferentes comunidades latinoamericanas y estadounidenses.
Thank you to the City Council of the City of Los Angeles and to the different communities.
Le agradecemos grandemente por esta oportunidad a la comunidad.
We're very grateful to you for giving this opportunity to our community.
Por nuestra adaptación a esta comunidad, a este idioma y aceptar nuestras raíces.
Thank you for allowing us to assimilate into this culture and to these roots. Thank you for accepting us. Thank you for accepting us, our traditions and our culture.
Y nuestra cultura centroamericana y nacional.
Thank you for
viva Nicaragua, viva Estados Unidos y todos los inmigrantes de este país. Gracias.
For accepting our culture, our traditions in this country. Viva Nicaragua and the United States. Thank you.
And a few words from Germán Peña.
Thank you. Germán Peña from Nicaraguan American Opportunity Foundation is here to say thank you very much. It is a great day for the Nicaraguan community, and we'll be every year celebrating this great occasion. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you.
De la Cámara de Comercio, es el director, presidente, por favor, unas palabras.
Muy buenos días. Yo represento al gremio del comercio de los nicaragüenses acá.
Good morning.
La Cámara de Comercio.
Good morning. I represent the Chamber of Commerce field of the commerce, the Nicaragüense commerces here in the United States.
Solo queremos agradecer la oportunidad que nos da
el Concilio de Los Ángeles de acá para seguir trabajando con nuestra comunidad acá desarrollando el comercio y nuevamente muchas gracias por esta oportunidad de abrirnos la puerta con este reconocimiento.
We just want to thank the City Council for allowing us and giving us the opportunity to partake in the commerce activity here in Los Angeles. Thank you once again for opening your business trade doors to us. Thank you for this recognition.
Thank you, council members, and that concludes this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. We are awaiting a presentation by the mayor. He's not here yet. So I want to thank Mr. Cardenas, Krikorian, and Labange for joining us. That brings us to a quorum. For the clerk, please call the roll.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Hahn, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti. 11 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. First item of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Moved by Wesson, seconded by Parks.
Commendatory for approval.
Moved by Krikorian, seconded by Weezer.
Mr. President, would you like to run through the agenda?
Let's run through the agenda.
Items 1 through 9 are items for which public hearings have been held.
Okay, colleagues, any specials on 1 through 9? Items 1 through 9?
Is here to cover the ropes.
Mr. Labange, we're calling specials right now.
Right, I got that. But I was trying to help you, Greg.
Okay. It would be very helpful if you tell me what we're doing. We're calling specials, Mr. Labange.
I just want to see if Cultural Affairs is here. Can we get Cultural Affairs here? I just want to talk to them right now.
Okay, we're losing control very fast. Mr. Parks, specials.
I'd like to hold number 4. There's an amending motion that's going to be circulated.
Number 4 would be held for an amending motion. Any other specials? Any specials on 1 through 9? Okay, will the clerk open the roll? Seeing none, close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, items number 2 and 3 will go forthwith. Next.
Items 10 through 19 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration. There has been a request to continue item 12 to June 4th, and there are cards on items 13, 14, and 16.
Okay. Those items will be continued on the items, what was it, 10 through?
Item 12 has been continued to June 4th.
12 was continued, and then we're items 10 through 19. Any specials? 10 through 19, any specials? Last call, no specials? 22, wait, we got to vote on it first. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. Okay, please open the roll on items 10 through 19.
13, 14, and 16 have cards.
Okay, 13, 14, and 16 will be called. Close the roll.
11 ayes.
11 ayes, that passes.
Forthwith on item 15. Forthwith on 15.
Forthwith on 15. Now that we're...
On the continuation agenda, there has been a request to continue item 20 3 weeks to May 21st.
Item 20 will be continued.
And item 20 is a closed session item. Do you wish to hold that, or 21 is a closed session item. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
I would recommend that we hold that in open session. All of the recommended items have been taken care of, and the two things that we should be concerned about: one, there's going to be a subsequent issue dealing with funding for lawyers' fees, and then the action that has been amended will have to come back to the council. And so, Dion, you may have something to add to that.
There is a card on it. Do you want to entertain the card now before handling this?
Yeah, they can do the card and then we can...
Yeah, we'll take the card on this then. Item number 21. Yes. Arnold Sachs. Mr. Sachs, item 21.
Thank you. Good morning. Arnold Sachs. My concern about you in this closed session item regarding the Brown Act is that you repeatedly violate the Brown Act when you don't maintain a full quorum in the council chambers, the rules that you have for the council state that you need to be in the council chambers. You also need to be seated at your desk to vote on items. Those two rules could be changed by a vote. But according to the article in the LA Times, no vote was ever taken. So you consistently violate the Brown Act when you leave the chambers and/or you're not seated at your desk to vote on items. This not voting and having it count as a yes vote violates the Brown Act. So how you can act on a Brown Act in a closed session while you're violating the Brown Act just doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Okay, now that brings us to item 21. If you'd rate it.
Thank you, Mr. President. If there's no intention of any of the council members to go into closed session, I'll proceed with the city attorney's recommendation. City attorney recommends that the city council comply with the writ of mandate ordering the city to adjust council procedures regarding the processing of regular and special meetings, to adjust the clerk's procedures regarding the recording of such meetings, and to set aside at a future meeting the council's August 15, 2008 Slauson Central approvals.
Thank you very much. Are there any speakers? There are no speakers on the queue. Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That concludes this portion of the agenda. Mr. Reyes is ready for the next presentation.
Members of the council, City of Los Angeles, I'd like to welcome you to the opening ceremonies of the 2010 Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month.
you last night, but you snuck out before I could get to you.
Oh, I'm glad you're there. That was great. All right. I'd like to welcome everyone, council members, colleagues. It's great to have the mayor with us today, our city attorney. Today we mark the beginning of 2010 Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month, where this year's theme is honoring Asian Pacific Islander American Angelenos. Today also marks the 33rd year that the City of Los Angeles has celebrated the diversity of the Asian and Pacific Islander communities and the richness that they bring to our communities. From Chinatown to Little Tokyo, to the communities of Thai Town, historic Filipino Town, Koreatown, we celebrate and relish in our diversity. It's a great pride that I have for the past 8 years represented Chinatown, and I've seen my colleagues, Councilor Garcetti, Councilor Weston, Councilor Perry, also assume that role in representing the richness of this great metropolis we call Los Angeles. I'm also honored to be part of this celebration because we get to amplify, we get to shout out all the greatness that is diversity, this international economy, and with that ability to connect throughout the world, because home base can be called here in Los Angeles, we can create new relationships. And this morning, our great mayor, in his energy, his foresight, along with the council, been able to announce great relationships. And I will not steal your thunder, Mayor, because I know we have a great announcement. And having him join us today in his office, I want to thank the sponsors, Disney, and our city attorney again for joining us. And I give you our Los Angeles Mayor, Antonio Villaraigosa.
Thank you, Ed. Councilmember Reyes, I say Ed affectionately for your leadership. Thank you for always standing up for our immigrant communities. Thank you for welcoming me once again to the chamber. I love to come here particularly for events like this. I have the honor today to proclaim Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month. And this celebration is one that gets better and better each year. Now, according to the Chinese zodiac, 2010 is the year of the tiger. And just as the tiger dazzles us with its strength and power, we can expect a robust year full of positive and powerful energy. And just a few minutes ago, we announced that BYD, a $25 billion capitalized company, will be citing its headquarters here. And it's fitting. Yes. Because nowhere else in the nation are the contributions of the Chinese and the Koreans and the Japanese and the Filipinos and the Thais and the Cambodians and the many communities that come from Asia more visible, more prevalent than here in the city of Los Angeles. I don't have to tell you that LA is home to the largest population of Filipino Americans, Thai Americans, Cambodian Americans, and yes, Korean Americans, as well as notable populations of Japanese Americans. We have the largest Chinese American population in the United States, Vietnamese Americans, and Southeast Asian and Pacific Islander Americans. And what is great about the fact that we have such a large populations from these communities is that they've contributed mightily to the nation. I was saying to Lisa, one of our honorees today, that this isn't just a celebration or a party. We have an education component connected to our ethnic heritage celebrations. Thanks to Walt Disney and our sponsors, KABC, which is our who's our media sponsor, our cable Time Warner company, who's one of our sponsors as well. We have an education component with essay contests and art
contest to really stimulate among our young people the contributions of the many communities that make Los Angeles. They get to learn that, for instance, it was the Chinese who helped to build the railroads and the city of Los Angeles. They find out that the Japanese were a part of the agricultural industry long before other communities came in. They find out that California's always been a beacon of hope for many communities from all over the world, but particularly from Asia. And so for us, we have not only benefited mightily from those contributions, we can learn so much from one another. They brought the practice of Buddhism and Shintoism and Hinduism and Islam and Sikhism and many other religions to our land, enriched our culture and our region, and made innumerable contributions to our communities. Make no mistake, one of the reasons that BYD is coming to Los Angeles is because of this diversity, is because this is the gateway to Asia, Latin America, and many places in the world. And so I'm thrilled today to honor three extremely accomplished Angelenos who come from different Asian countries, and beginning with Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, who's the Dream of Los Angeles honoree. Dr. Soon-Shiong was born in apartheid South Africa to Chinese immigrant parents who had fled their native land during World War II. Growing up the son of Chinese immigrants, he developed a strong cultural identity that he used to break down barriers in South Africa's deeply segregated medical community. When he and his wife, actress Michelle Chan, who couldn't be with us today, relocated to Los Angeles, Dr. Soon-Shiong was already an accomplished physician. It was at UCLA, my alma mater, by the way, and your alma mater as well, that he developed groundbreaking techniques to treat diabetes and researched more effective ways to deliver chemotherapy to cancer patients. This led to the breakthrough in nanotechnology behind Abraxane, the breast cancer drug developed by the company Abraxis. Dr. Soon-Shiong is a gifted surgeon, but thanks to his entrepreneurial skills, he will be able to save many, many more lives. We also thank him for his philanthropic efforts. Dr. Soon-Shiong is passionate about addressing the disparities in care among underserved populations in Los Angeles. And we all know the role that he played in helping to reopen Martin Luther King Hospital. We thank him, we acknowledge him for his passion for medicine, his entrepreneurial vision, and his commitment to his adopted home, the city of Los Angeles. I am indeed honored to present to my friend, Dr. Soon-Shiong, with the Dream of Los Angeles Award. Get in.
Congratulations, Doctor.
And also, on behalf of our city and all of our residents with this acknowledgement. Thank you. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Our next honoree, Lisa Ling, our Hope of Los Angeles honoree. Now, Lisa Ling, as many of you know, is a strong believer in the power of global awareness. Her mission is to raise consciousness surrounding issues and stories that don't always make the headlines. She's traveled all over the globe to tell vitally important stories of courage and calamity, triumph and tragedy, stories that are all too often ignored. Her career in journalism began when she was just 18 years old. 2 or 3 years ago, I guess, when she became one of the youngest anchors ever on the Channel One network. At just 21 years old, she covered the civil war in Afghanistan and went on to continue her wartime coverage in Iraq. She later went on to co-host ABC's daytime hit show, The View, which won its first Emmy during her tenure there. In 2002, she was the first woman ever to host National Geographic Explorer. And this year, she'll host her own series on the new Oprah Winfrey Network. For her courage and tenacity in reporting from around the globe, for her commitment to bringing the world to our living rooms, and for her many achievements in news media, we award Lisa Ling the Hope of Los Angeles honoree today.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great. And then, got one of these two.
Thank you.
What is Los Angeles if it isn't a city of hope and dreams? But what is Los Angeles if there isn't a spirit about this great town that we all love and feel, and that I think reverberates through every single one of us? And so our Spirit of Los Angeles honoree today is Dr. Don Nakanishi. Dr. Nakanishi pioneered the field of Asian American studies from coast to coast. But before he was awarded degrees from both Yale and Harvard, he began his life right here in Los Angeles, where he was born to formerly intern Japanese American parents. Dr. Nakanishi's many scholarly works include over 100 books, articles, and reports on the political participation by Asian American and other minority groups in American politics. He recently retired from his position as director of the Asian American Studies Center and professor in the Graduate School of Education at UCLA, where young Antonio Villaraigosa had the great fortune of being one of his students. And Don, I'd like to say I was one of your best students, but I know that's not true. Dr. Nakanishi was named one of the 100 most influential Asian Americans in the country. He's currently working to help engage a new generation of activists in East Los Angeles, the neighborhood where he grew up, and that helped to develop him his own cultural and political identity. For all of his many accomplishments and achievements in the field of education and policy, we're proud to honor him today with the Spirit of Los Angeles Award.
Congratulations, Doctor.
Did you take classes with him?
No, I didn't get an opportunity.
Yes. I want to take a moment to thank the Walt Disney Company for its invaluable support to the City of Los Angeles. As I said, what is important about these events is that we have an opportunity to learn about the many cultures. Not just to be tolerant of one another, but to really embrace the diversity of LA. That, to me, is why LA is the place that it is. The city where the world comes together, and the place where dreams come true, no matter where you come from. And Disney has led the effort as a good corporate citizen to help to elucidate our young people, to involve them in these celebrations. And I want to thank Andrea Gibson for her work and her efforts, and we'll talk a little more outside. Finally, I'd like to bring up our city attorney, Carmen Trutanich, to say a few words as well.
Good morning. First off, let me say that I'm very excited to stand here with the mayor, Councilman Reyes. my colleagues, and the community members as we kick off the 2010 Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, American Heritage Month. Our three honorees are indicative of the type of contribution that the Asian Pacific Islanders have brought to our fine city. It's important to note that this entire month that we will be celebrating and honoring this rich culture. So briefly, in my best Croatian, I want to say Kamsahamnida, Arigato, Sise, and Gaman. To each of the...
we'll work on the pronunciation, but good effort.
I'll translate. To the Asian Pacific Islanders who are here, who have migrated to this country, thank you. You have added so much to our great city.
And thank you, Councilmember Reyes and Mayor Villaraigosa. And it was wonderful to celebrate the great work that you've brought a Chinese electric car and hybrid car company here just before. But I know for all the council members that represent this entire city, that since our founding in 1781, there were two Asian folks of Asian descent who were with original pobladores. There were 46 originally, only 44 made it. The two Asian folks that came from Mexico, then Mexico up to Los Angeles, the mission in San Gabriel, were classified as Chino. They're actually from the Philippines. Even though they're classified as Chinese, they were Filipino. And in many ways, it's a great metaphor for what is left undone. While those Filipinos set out on the journey, they were not part of the original 44 founders, but every single month that has gone by since, Asian Pacific Islanders have been at the heart of what this city is, should be, and will be. And I think our ties as the great Pacific capital on the east coast of the Pacific was really borne out this morning. So congratulations on that. Congratulations to our winners as well, Lisa, and to Don, and to, of course, Dr. Soon, who's done such an amazing job for all of us. Congratulations. And I'd like to recognize Mr. Labange for a few words as well.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody there and give a great, again, welcome. And Mr. Mayor, thank you for your leadership, especially our Sister City program, our People to People program from Nagoya, Japan, our first Sister City, Busan, Korea, Guangzhou, China, Taipei, Taiwan, Jakarta, Indonesia, as well as Makati, Philippines. All that's very special, and welcome all the council generals and Hamaga Humaga Hapun.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very good. Okay.
And with that, thank you very much, and have a good celebration. We're going to unveil, I think, the cover.
Let me acknowledge Olga Garay, obviously, for her efforts here as well. As we said, this is an opportunity for us to share our artists and our dreams with one another. Can we get the honorees to stand?
While that is happening, let us call the roll for the special meeting, Madam Clerk.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Han, Weezer, Koretz, Krikoyan, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti, 13 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
We just have one item that has had a public hearing, and so if there's no members who wish to be heard on that, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. If we can go adjourn that special meeting, go back to the regular meeting for our public comment. Thank you to the members of the public who have been very patient today. We will go... 22 forthwith, without objection, absolutely. We have 2 minutes per speaker, and I know we have many cards today. Excuse me. Kim Neverman is going to be our first speaker. After Mr. Neverman is Dr. Clyde Williams. And after that, we will hear from Show Green.
You think to hold my time till it gets a little quieter?
We're on public comment. Yep. Good morning, sir. Thank you.
Time till it gets a little quieter.
Yeah, I'll just say that right now. I was going to say, if we could, as efficiently as possible, I know we've got a lot of guests that are here, but if we can move as quietly as possible out of the chambers. We thank everybody for your participation in celebrating our Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Thank you. Mr. Neva?
Good morning to the LA City Council and to the citizens of the great city of Los Angeles. Today we have the chance to live up to our name, the City of Angels. Today this body has the power to adopt a resolution of condemnation of the state of Arizona and to impose an economic boycott of city business to Arizona companies. I have an excerpt of a lawsuit filed by a Tucson police officer against the state of Arizona, and part of it reads, "The mandate of SB 1070 compels under threat of lawsuit, discipline, and loss of required certificate every law enforcement officer in the state of Arizona to actively engage in racial profiling, to detain, question, and require every Hispanic found within the city of Tucson to prove their legal status in the United States. Irrespectively of country of origin, citizenship, immigration status, solely on immutable or mutable characteristics, common or stereotypical attribution of Hispanics." The law was designed, it's a racial profiling law, and I beg this body to live. Let me start again. I beg of this body to keep the spirit of the City of Angels alive and to say to Arizona, what you have done is so wrong and against basic human rights. Let the city be the bright star against the wrongs that have been done against humanity and basic rights. I would also ask all citizens of Los Angeles to boycott Arizona until they understand that no matter what color our skin is, we are all people. We bleed red. We are people who deserve human rights and dignity, and I beg the City of Los Angeles, if you are currently doing business in Arizona, stop.
Thank you, Mr. Neverman, very much. Dr. Clyde Williams is our next speaker.
Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA. Transportation. It's a kind of an interesting issue, especially for CDs 1, 13, 14, and a few others. There's a basic element going on right now within the Department of Transportation and Bureau of Engineering. It's called piecemealing. The piecemealing of the San Fernando, Riverside Drive, Main Street, Spring Street, and Broadway corridors through our neighborhood council areas. Glassell Park came out against a road widening. Why? Because DOT, BOE had not consulted with bicyclists and others along the corridor. Now we have a North Spring Street bridge widening. However, the Cornfields Arroyo Seco plan says it's only supposed to have one lane each way in order to promote better access to the LA River. Oh, but Bureau of Engineering is going to give it 2 lanes each way and widen it. But, Asian. They held the public participation for all 14 people in the Korean church, but they did not provide any notices in Korean. Why did they choose the Korean church on the north side of Spring Street rather than the more Spanish-speaking Downey Recreation Center on the south side of Spring Street, where the real people in the neighborhood live? Lincoln Heights was not really consulted. So you need to have DOT establish a corridor study for anything going through Northeast LA as a unified transportation plan rather than the piecemealing that they're doing right now on San Fernando Road, the Figueroa Roundabout, and the North Spring Street Bridge. Thank you.
Dr. Williams. I think is it Sherry Green or Cherie Green? I'm sorry. I know the pen looks like it was running out here. But after that will be John Walsh. Good morning, Ms. Green.
Good morning, President Garcetti. My name is Cheryl Green, and I reside at 9515 Holmes Street in Los Angeles. I was born and raised in Los Angeles County. I just got back about 3 years ago. I've been enslaved by my family through the system as schizophrenia, and I'm asking to be released from the hold. I'm back in school. I'm back in school being re-educated to political science and anthropology to understand the systems and the laws which put these holds on me. And through my knowledge, I have the understanding that I can be removed from these holds by the little person being given a head start to get ahead of the people that's holding me on this hold, not only the system but my ex-family. I'd like to reverse these holds and put them on the hold and be released from the schizophrenia or whatever else is called, and I'd like for you to give me permission to do that.
We can only take public comment right now, so we can
That is a public
listen.
comment.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. We appreciate your comments today. If you were looking for a response, we can, under the law, since it's not agendized, give you an in-depth response, but we will hear that, and we appreciate you being here very much. Thank you. John Walsh is our next speaker. After that is Betsy Handler.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org, HIGHLANDS.org. 1,500,000 hits since in the past 8 months. All we are saying is give peace a chance. I can't believe these meetings. I've been going to these meetings for 25 years. It's become the Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa show. This is your turf. Defend it. Take those knee pads off. This man is using the meeting. He's almost here every minute. When he sees a camera, it's like a wet dream to him. ¿Quién es más macho, you or the mayor? I mean, he's going to be up there next. I can't believe it. And his little friends in the LA Times and the Daily News, they're not going to say anything. Oh, excuse me, I'm a little too noisy. Mr. Parks is sleeping. Because he was late to the meeting, we now have to spend $30 million in extra in our DWP bill. He's sleeping right now. They won't show you his picture. We call
for the record,
we call
Mr.
you
Parks is
the
not
late
sleeping.
Mr. Parks. Arrest me, arrest me, arrest me. If I had a Nazi salute here, that's fine with you. Kill all Jews is fine with you. But when I mention the name of a city councilman, that's not covered by the First Amendment. Those are your rules. Janice Hahn, anybody but Janice Hahn for lieutenant governor. Anybody. HollywoodHighlands.org. She now has excuses. You've given her a reason, so she does not have to come to 6 to 8 more meetings in the next few weeks. We know that's not a legitimate excuse. That's so she can campaign. I'm telling you right now, somebody's going to come out after me from LADWP. There was an expose the other day on Channel 2. We're talking about people getting drunk. People working for LADWP that are getting drunk. HollywoodHighlands.org. I'm telling you, and incidentally, in Hollywood they just opened the Museum of Death. And guess who the first person to go to the Museum of Death was? Mr. Garcetti. It's on Hollywood.
Thank you very
HollywoodHighlands.org.
much, Mr. Walsh. Just a couple pieces of information. Mr. Parks was not asleep. I've never been to that museum, and you can be thrown out under the Norse versus Santa Cruz decision last year for a Nazi salute if it disrupts the meeting. Mr. Parks, did you want to
I'd just like to say, so everybody's aware, and Mr. Walsh has never been one that dealt with facts, but the issue is I was excused. I was not late for a meeting. I was excused 2 weeks before the meeting. So I just want to clarify that because he just doesn't have an opportunity to get those facts.
Thank you very much.
I wasn't sleeping either, so I just want to make sure.
We saw that. Your eyes were both open. Betsy Handler is our next speaker. Arnold Sachs will follow her. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. My name is Betsy Handler. I'm the Director of Legal Services at Intercity, and I've got two hard acts to follow, the Dragons and and this one. But I'm here to urge you, please, 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 to help support the effort to put Councilmember Alarcon's rent increase moratorium on the HCED committee meeting for May 5th, next Wednesday. I am also here to urge you to support whatever comes out of the committee, however long the moratorium may be. I believe the bill is now a year, but there may be amendments. As you know from the LAHD commissioned economic roundtable study, we have seriously rent-burdened tenants in this city. We also have, according to the LAHD, a negative CPI. If we don't do something, the rent-stabilized tenants are going to be subjected to a 3% rent increase as of July 1st. In this economic climate, they cannot afford it. The LAHD study, the roundtable study, also shows that landlords of RSO buildings are doing pretty well, even in this economy. Please at least get the bill to HCED so we can have a full and fair hearing on it, and please support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Handler. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker. After Mr. Sachs will be Curtis Killings.
Thank you. Good morning. Arnold Sachs. A couple of things to clean up. Last week there was an item on your agenda regarding the Harbor Division's new police station. And it was brought to the public's attention that this police station was built solely through Harbor discretionary funds. So the Harbor Department has its discretionary funds for police force, the Harbor Police. LAWA has its police force, which are not sworn LAPD. So with the DWP being in the headlines, I was wondering why the DWP doesn't have a discretionary force to use for police to provide security for its maintenance, for its facilities, and for its properties, thereby freeing up the LAPD to do work in the rest of the city. Why should the city's own police force provide services to the proprietary departments when, in fact, it provides minimum services at LAX and minimum services at the Harbor, because both of those proprietary departments have their own police forces? That being said, there was another article, again, more or less touching on DWP, regarding business reforms in the city of LA. And I believe when the mayor appointed Austin Butner as the business czar, one of the programs they were looking at was reducing the DWP rate for businesses. So what happens? There's just a new rate increase, to be followed by the July 1st rate increase. Is the city council going to have hearings before July 2nd to discuss the rate increase that the DWP is going to impose or request before July 1st? And finally, last week, there was an article in the LA Times regarding a teenager winning a neighborhood council post. And what was great about it is she described going to a boring neighborhood council meeting, and her mother said, she's not one of those loudmouth politicians. Congratulations on your appointment.
Curtis Killings is next. Deanna Weekly will be after Mr. Killings.
Hello, my name is, if I can get my eyes straight. Hello, my name is Mr. Killings. I'm a member of Los Angeles CAN. I am here to urge the Housing Committee to keep the one-year rent freeze or moratorium, which should be extended until this purported city, state, and worldwide economic crisis subsides. July 1st is near. Don't around any longer. Many renters already pay as much as 60% of their often fixed incomes. Now, as recently as today, okay, the portion of my combined income, which is called SSI, was decreased from $224 to $72. That happened to me this morning. Okay, I did not get one single notice. I wasn't thought of not one way to even be informed that this would even happen to me. Okay, that's 63% decrease in 24 hours. I woke up and it was gone. Okay, I'm on a fixed income. I worked almost the whole entirety of my adult life. Even part of my juvenile life, I worked. So I'm not a freeloader by any stretch of the word. Any stretch of the imagination. 68%. And they're talking about constantly raising rents. How can they consciously do this? Believe me, this purported California crisis, a financial crisis that we're going through, okay? You see, that's their reasoning behind taking the 72%, 68% of my income away, okay? Now, I'm not the only one, I'm sure. I'm sure I'm not an island. I'm sure there's many others just like myself who had to suffer this great increase, this decrease in budget. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Killings.
Okay.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Deanna Weekly is next, and Al Sabo is after that. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Dee Weekly and a resident of downtown Los Angeles and Councilmember Weezar's district. I fully support Councilmember Alicon's motion to enact a year moratorium on all rent increases to the SRO units. I thank you this morning for putting it on the calendar. Thank you very much. Now please support it. I also think Councilmember Alicon's motion is very important, and it is a first step in reforming the LARSO to protect, stabilize our housing. For years, my housing has gone up, but my income has stayed the same. Now, trust me, as tenants, we've been running budget deficits and shortfalls for years, and every year it gets worse, making affordable housing even more difficult. Eliminate the minimum rent, and please eliminate it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Weekly. Al Sabo is next. After that is James Porter. Good morning, sir.
Yes, my name is Al Sabo, and I'm a resident living in downtown Los Angeles. One reason why I'm here is asking for your support of the moratorium on rent increases. It's so important to thousands, perhaps tens, even hundreds of thousands of people, such as myself, living in this city on a fixed income. Without your help, eventually we'll all be homeless. In fact, if the rent increases continue, I was thinking about asking Councilmember Wesson, since he does such a fine job with pet adoptions, maybe he could even think about adopting me if I end up on the street. But more importantly, it is so important for others also. There's a brother and sister combination living in the building where I reside. They're both on SSI. One's benefits have been cut by $300, the other by $400. A loss of $700 in income is far more than they could possibly afford at this time. And it's not only the lower income people that are affected. With the economic situation being what it is, obviously a lot of tenants are becoming unemployed, now collecting unemployment benefits, and these people certainly can't afford any increase either. So I'm not from New Orleans, but it works so well for the Saints. I just like to say, who dat say we can't stop this automatic rent increase? Who dat? Who dat? Thank you.
Thank you. James Porter.
Help. Help. Help.
These are the cries and voices of the people in your district. Councilman, we believe in you. That's why we voted for you. And now we're asking for you to believe in us, our cries, our voices, and feel what we feel, our hurt, our pains, and our suffering, and vote for us as we did for you. The rent increase is hurting us. Councilman, don't let this happen to us. We need your help. Remember, during this economic crisis, people are losing their jobs. Paychecks are being cut. We know the landlords are hurting, but we are hurting too more. We, the people, want to clarify one thing. We are not living, we are surviving at that level. And every penny counts. And you heard me. I said pennies. Councilman, we need your support now. We need your vote, and we need you to move the rent increase forward as soon as possible. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Steve Diaz is next. Sorry? Oh, you waved it. Okay, sorry. Rodolfo Mendez is next. Is Rodolfo Mendez here? I'm just going in the exact order. I think your card's in here. Don't worry. No, Rodolfo Mendez. Cecilia Gonzalez. Okay. Gilma Rodas. Okay. Bill Preslak. Alba Giron. Ana Soto. Maria Antonia Gallegos. Linda Valverde. We have an interpreter if you need as well. You can do it yourself, or we have an interpreter. Tenemos un...
Hi.
Please, good morning. What's your name?
Linda Valverde.
Okay, thanks, Linda.
Hi, good
If
morning.
we said somebody else, did we mention her name too? Sorry? We still have a whole bunch of cards, don't worry. Please.
Good morning, council members. We, the renters, are only seeking a temporary break on our annual rent increases. We are faced with reduction in wages and increases in utilities and transportation costs. This is a heavy burden on so many of us. This saving will help us cover other basic necessities to survive. Remember, housing is a human right, not a landlord right. We know there is hardship on some landlords, but we are suffering more of the hardship. Some of us come to you angry with every right, but most of us come to you humbly asking to please move forward and push this moratorium through. The mayor just said this morning, this is a town of spirit and hope and dreams. Please make our dreams come true. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. Pam Janagan. Pam Janagan? Or Hernagan?
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Pam, and I am a low-income resident. I'm here to support the idea of everyone having a home, including dogs. But I am in more support of people having homes. This is why it is so important that you act upon the Alarcon rent freeze motion. We already have 40,000 homeless people in Los Angeles, and we don't need to add to this number. We need you to vote in support of this motion next week. Tenants are depending on you. We need this rent freeze, like as people have said, people's income is going down, rent, lights, gas is going up. We need help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Walter Bechtel is our next speaker. Then we'll go to Claudia Gomez. We'll follow Mr. Bechtel.
Good morning. That's about the same thing I wanted to talk about is rent stabilization. I think the city hadn't originally intended to remove us from our places because Mr. Villaraigosa thought we were going to stay over at Mr. Palmer's place. But Mr. Palmer won his lawsuit, and now there are no places for us to stay. Every place we have to stay is at least double in our rent. I had my rent over doubled, and
I think the city also needs to know that you could be, from what my understanding is, if you use SRO to bypass the rent stabilization ordinance, which forbids doubling the rent and such things like that, SRO isn't liable to the rent stabilization ordinance, is true, but the city is liable to comply with the Constitution and the Ninth Amendment. You cannot use one part of the law to disparage guarantees provided by the other part of the law, and the guarantees provided through rent stabilization you're using to bypass, you're bypassing that with this SRO. So also, I think you need to understand, I do not have to file a lawsuit and nobody has to file a lawsuit or have a protest to be guaranteed their civil rights. Many of us on Social Security couldn't file a lawsuit anyway, and it's up to the city attorney or attorney general to file a lawsuit for us. But I hope that he will do so if you guys do not comply and enforce some kind of a rent stabilization, whether or not SRO is compelled to comply with it or not, or any other rental group that is appointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Claudia Gomez is next, and then Leticia Andrade. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Claudia Gomez. I live here in the city of Los Angeles, and I'm from Unión de Vecinos. I'm here to support Mr. Alarcon's motion, and I urge you to support it too this Wednesday, because most of our families, low-income families, are going to get hit by this increasement. And also, think about it. Banks are getting help, homeowners are getting help, and the tenants are not getting any help from anyone. So I urge you to help us out and support this motion. And this is just the crisis, and we know people are losing jobs, veterans are not getting enough money, people are getting cuts in their Social Security, and our seniors, families, low-income families, and our veterans probably will be ending up homeless in our streets. So we don't want that. We want your help, and this is the time to make a change. So if you want to help us out, make this change happen to the tenants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Leticia Andrade, and then Maria Carrillo will be next.
Sí, buenos días. Mi nombre es Leticia Andrade. Yo también estoy aquí apoyando a los compañeros de Unión de Vecinos y a todas las uniones que vinieron hoy para apoyando a...
Good morning, Maria. My name is Maria Andrade. I'm here also in support of all of our colleagues that came representing Unión de Vecinos.
Así, estamos apoyando la moratoria del control de renta porque en nuestras vecindades, en nuestras comunidades.
We're supporting the moratorium for the rent control because we're suffering in our communities.
Mucha gente ya no está pudiendo pagar su renta y está viviendo hasta en sus carros y en la calle porque las rentas están muy altas.
A lot of our neighbors in our communities are not able to pay their rent. They're having to end up living in their cars and have to leave their homes. Why? Because the rents are very high.
Sí, entonces entre la falta de vivienda económica y las rentas altas que no paran, les pedimos que nos apoyen, por favor.
And between the rents being so high and the economic crisis, we're in a very difficult situation, so we're here to ask you to please help us.
Gracias. Thank you. María Carrillo.
Buenos días para todos ustedes, con mucho respeto.
Good morning to everyone.
Mi nombre es María Carrillo, vivo en Boyle Heights.
Good morning, my name is María Carrillo, I live in Boyle Heights, and with all due respect, we're all here to beg you.
Y yo pertenezco a la Unión de Vecinos.
To help us, I belong to the organization Unión de Vecinos.
Y vengo a pedirles, a suplicarles a todos ustedes que nos ayuden. A pedirles con mucho respeto
I'm here to ask and to beg all of you to please help us, and I'm asking with all respect to...
Vengo a pedir a todos los concejales que se nos apoye en la moción del congelamiento de las rentas.
I'm asking all the councilmen to please support us and help us and support us with the ordinance to freeze the rent increases.
Es que ustedes saben mejor que nadie que estamos en un momento, en un tiempo muy crítico
you know more than anyone else that we're in a very critical situation.
Ya no nos alcanza ni para comer,
We don't even have enough money to buy our food
porque tenemos que dejar de comprar nuestro mandado para poder pagar nuestras rentas.
because we are now making the difficult decision to stop buying our food in order to be able to pay for our rents.
Y a mí lo que más me duele son las criaturas. Con nosotros las personas mayores podemos aguantar un poco, pero ellos no saben de no hay.
What pains me the most is to see the small children. Us, as adults, we can support not eating for longer periods of time and we'll be okay. But with the children, if you tell them that we don't have any more to feed you, they don't understand that.
Un millón de gracias.
I thank you very much.
Candido Maras is our next speaker. Is that Rosario Panfillo also? Okay. Okay, let me go to Rosario Panfillo, then we'll come back to you. Panfilo, excuse me. You bet.
Good morning. My name is Rosario Panfilo, and I live in LA. I'm a member of SAGE, and I'm here to support the motion of Council Member Alarcon for the implements of rent increases, monetary. I think that this monetary will benefit thousands of tenants in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Tell Perez.
Buenos días, voy a hablar en español porque sé que hay traducción y no todos tienen equipaje de traducción.
Good morning. I'm going to speak in Spanish because a lot of people still don't have translation equipment.
Mi nombre es Delmi Pérez y vivo en el distrito del concejal Garcetti.
My name is Jamie Perez and I live in Councilman Garcetti's district.
También trabajo y organizo a cientos de inquilinos en el distrito del concejal Reyes.
I also work and I organize hundreds of renters in Councilman Reyes' district.
Y hoy venimos muchos inquilinos hoy, si se pueden parar los inquilinos que están aquí hoy.
Today, a lot of renters are here with us. Please, the renters are here in support of this, stand up.
Desgraciadamente muchos se tuvieron que ir a sus casas por falta de transporte y por el show que estuvo aquí más temprano.
Unfortunately, many of them had to go back home because of lack of transportation. They could not make it, and the ones that were here had to leave because of the long program that took place here this morning.
Sin embargo, seguimos saliendo semana tras semana aquí exigiéndole a ustedes, miembros del concilio.
Nevertheless, we keep coming here week after week after week demanding of you, members of the City Council,
que respeten nuestro derecho a una vivienda.
To respect our right for a home.
Que respeten y que pasen esta moción del concejal Alarcón que es tan necesaria ahorita en esta crisis económica.
We ask you to respect and to approve Councilman Alarcon's motion, which is very much needed and critical in this very serious economic times.
Y que se den cuenta que todos los apartamentos que vemos que están vacíos hoy en día es porque las familias no pueden pagar su renta y se tienen que ir de sus hogares.
We also want you to realize that if you see a lot of empty apartments in your neighborhoods, why? It's because a lot of the families are unable to afford paying the rent, and therefore, consequently, they have to leave their apartments.
Y entonces yo creo que esta moción, este moratorio puede ayudar también a los dueños que más familias no se vayan de sus apartamentos y dejen de pagar su renta.
I believe that this motion, this moratorium, would also help the property owners and the landlords. Why? Because this would prevent a lot more families leaving those apartments and stop paying them the rent.
Gracias por su tiempo.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you very much. Gracias. Sandra Miranda and Candido Maras and Pat Berry. Is that three? You got it right? Okay.
Thank you, council members. The reason why I'm here today, I want to talk about the DWP workers, and I know we've been here before throughout the years, and the dedication of the DWP workers and the loyalty and the commitment. Let's not let Channel 2 be a reflection of the overall DWP workers. We have very loyal and dedicated workers. There was DWP workers that came in the past that talked about a corrupted contract that was canceled. And I also want to mention the fact, I'm getting a little upset here, but I also want to mention the fact that if we don't look at contract reform, and if we don't look at management reform, we are going to destroy this great city. If we don't stop and take a serious look at what's going on with these contracts, if we don't stop and take a look at what's going on with our management, we will not only destroy DWP, but we will destroy the city. There needs to be contract reform and management reform. We have dedicated DWP workers who are loyal, who go beyond the call of their duty, not only for themselves and their family, also for the taxpayers and the ratepayers. Please, I'm asking you, City Council and Mayor, please revisit these contracts. Along with management reform, you need to have change in your management. Thank you.
Thank you. Candido Maras? Pat Berry. Okay. Pat Berry and then Candido.
Greetings to all of the City Council. My name is Patricia Berry. I'm a resident of 20 years and a civil rights attorney. Perdóname, mi español no es muy bien. Mis vecinos, yo soporto toda la resolución para rent control. Y para los trabajadores de la ciudad no es problema. It is not the problem of the city workers. It is the problem of City Council and the way you do business with the corrupt contracts just referenced by Sandra Miranda. I just won a case in the Ninth Circle for Candido in the Ninth Circuit, a federal court of appeals, Candido Maras, called Maras versus Bassett. It's all over the internet because it has a long-reaching precedent. I've represented 7 DWP employees, mainly whistleblowers. I am incensed with corporate media who is determined to divide city residents against city workers. It is a divisive technique to take the heat off City Council and the corrupt way it continues to do business with these corrupt contracts. Sandra Miranda, who just spoke to you, went for 2 years before she could convince you to stop the corrupt contract dealing with the Empire Janitorial Supplies contract. She was forced to file a retaliation case, and you let it linger on in federal court. Sarah Roper, a dedicated electrical service operator, the only woman operator in the Valley, reported safety violations to the DWP commissioners. They ignored her repeatedly. Instead, the City Council allowed the commissioners to hire outside legal counsel to the tune of $600,000 for an offer made to her after 3 years of litigation for $68,000. Why wasn't it offered? Thank you.
Thank you. Candido Maras is next, and then Noel Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. I too want to thank Sandra Miranda because in 2004 she was one of the brave DWP workers who came before the City Council and asked for your help. Miss Janice Hahn, the great Janice Hahn, was one of the few that came and supported and asked questions, and in fact called one of the DWP a liar when he was caught lying. So thank you, Sandra Miranda, and I hope that the public takes a look at the Channel 2 report last night. And again, the 99% of the WP workers are trying hard to save ratepayers' money, so let's work together to save this city. On a second note, I passed out a flyer in regards to the U.S. Naval Sea Cadet. I hope you all received that. Our team from Los Angeles won first place. There were 32 teams that were involved from Hawaii, across the Northeast, etc. So again, we have a program here. There's a group called the Bryce Canyon and the Betsy Ross divisions. They took first and second. I hope that each council member will take a look at this and bring this to your district, because if we can save one child in our districts, it's worth it. So I hope Councilman Greg Smith will work with me to bring these young men in. Mr. President, you're a member of the services. If you would have seen these young men from Los Angeles, they were outstanding. Everybody stood there and could not believe the discipline, the honor, and the integrity that these young men had. So we hope that we can bring them soon to this council. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Candido. We'll work with you on that. Thank you. Noel Weiss is our last speaker for our general public comment.
Good morning, Council. I think, again,
core question, what are we doing and why? Maybe a little less love of power, a little more power of love would, I think, try to move things along here. I am disappointed that we're not 245ing Austin Buter's interim appointment. Jan Perry introduced the motion. For people who are watching, it's Council File 10-0708. It originally was set for hearing today. However, the President of the City Council exercises authority to exit off and convert it to committee. Today's the last day to 245 Mr. Buettner. I think it's really important, and by the way, for those who don't know, he now calls himself First Deputy Mayor. So we now have a situation where we have Wall Street inside the front door, potential for conflicts of interest, incredible. The proprietary information, this man owns 3 million shares of Evercore. This is an M&A company, a mergers and acquisitions company on Wall Street. The mayor has let this man inside the bowels of the DWP. It's up to the council, you people, our representatives, our force, so to speak, to at least question the man's capabilities and qualifications for the job, and to insist at least that he sever himself from the mayor's office in connection with this situation. It was not done, and I think it's a gross, respectfully, bit of political malpractice on the part of this city council. All we want is just to have the man vetted. That's it. Having been denied that information, I think it's a travesty, and unfortunately, the city council, I think, missed the boat on this, and it's unfortunate, and maybe somebody will stand up and try to push the issue going forward. Secondly, and lastly, since Mr. Carter's here from the city attorney's office, I just want to put in my push for a charter amendment for a public advocate inspector general. The city attorney feels that they're conflicted. We're talking, you just heard from Candido, fraud, abuse, and waste. Nobody talks about that in the context of the budget. City attorney feels that they cannot protect these people who are in this situation. You need a good, competent whistleblower ordinance coupled with a public advocate inspector general. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And I think Tuesday we will have Mr. Buettner in here in chambers. It was a legal opinion. The city attorney could reiterate it that there is no formal 245 power on an interim appointment. I know Mr. Zine asked for that repeatedly, and that was a very strong opinion that came. But he will be coming in to present his vision for the DWP on Tuesday. Thank you. That will close our general public comment, and we will go now to items that were called special for cards and by council members. First item, please.
Item 4, called special by Councilmember Parks, and an amending motion has been submitted and distributed to the council.
Okay, Mr. Parks.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, colleagues, we found in the general process that a settlement amount came into the city and was put in a suspense account, and once located, the city attorney wanted to use all or a portion of it. The Budget and Finance Committee looked at this and decided to create a pilot for a 6-month period, but to sweep the remaining amount into the reserve fund. So this is a clarity of the original Budget and Finance report did not go into this specific detail, but we wanted to clarify what happened to the remaining amount of money. And so it helps us continue to close the gap in this year, and it also will assist us for next year. So that's the essence of this amending motion. And also, let me just make one verbal motion and ask the CLA to work with the Budget and Finance Committee to create a new fund in our budgetary process that deals with settlements, to where all settlements should come into a suspense account and be dispersed, as opposed to people being able to put them in these odd accounts that they find within the city. So settlement account will solve this in the future.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Koretz.
Yes, I think there's a disagreement on this, on what we thought we had done in committee. My understanding was that we had all agreed, I believe, that the 300,000 plus piece of this 600,000 plus fund go to a 6-month pilot for the city attorney to use for billboard enforcement, which we thought would result in a pretty substantial multiplier of that amount of money in city liability defended and in money brought in with code enforcement actions. My understanding was that the rest of that money would remain in this fund, and were we to determine that the 6-month pilot was successful, that we would continue to pull the rest of that from the fund and use it to continue that enforcement. So I'd like to ask the city attorney come up and speak to the impact of sweeping the rest of that fund as opposed to keeping it as a potential to keep this pilot going.
Good morning. William Carter with the City Attorney's Office, accompanied by Peter Chevarria of the City Attorney's Office. It was the understanding of the City Attorney's Office that all of these monies, $616,000, would be designated for use for, and be available for billboard enforcement. These $616,000 were generated through billboard enforcement funds. We believe that all these monies should be either set aside or designated for that purpose because we are currently in the middle of major billboard litigation, as you all know, not just on the civil side, but on the criminal side. We have over 28 civil lawsuits pending against the city, challenging our various laws and enforcement actions, and we probably have an excess of 50 criminal and civil prosecution cases that we are in the middle of or pending. So we believe not having access or designation for all $616,000 would have a substantial negative impact on our ability to continue our plan or be able to staff these very significant billboard cases, which have the potential to generate considerable amount of revenue for the city and the general fund.
Thank you. And on that basis, I would ask that we reject this amendment and adopt the committee report as which was originally worded.
I would also add, if I may, that the City Attorney's Office does contemplate within the next week bringing in approximately $1 million into the general or reserve fund, for which there could be a designation or an offset, so that if these $252,000 are needed for the general or the reserve fund, we can advise you that we do anticipate that at least 4 times that amount will be going into the general fund in the very near future. So this money, this other $252,000, could be designated for billboards, and we're very certain that that would be made up very soon in the next week.
Mr. Huizar, Mr. Alarcon, and Mr. Parks.
Thank you. So to clarify, you're going to use how much money for the set-aside pilot?
Well, currently, as I understood through the Budget and Finance Committee, we would use initially $363,000 for a 6-month pilot program, but the other $252,000 would be set aside for the same program after the 6-month period to see how well we're doing.
Yeah, and you've had a lot of success so far. Can you tell us what some of the success that you've had in the work you've been doing here already?
Well, just through the, in terms of on the civil side, since we've taken office, we've been successful in every civil matter that we've been challenged on. In addition to federal action, we've been able to successfully beat back civil challenges to our law, matters holding the city in contempt for enforcing its billboard law. We also are currently engaged in at least 4 criminal actions and 3 civil affirmative actions in which we are currently negotiating considerable amount of potential fines. So we've had great success, and we've been able to do that without the use of a full staff of investigators. And here, as was pointed out, we are not intending to hire employees. It's merely a stopgap or bridge to use private investigators to do our work for us.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And the city has been trying to get a handle on these issues for a very long time. It seems like we are finally now doing it. I think this is a great way to go about it, to continue that 6-month pilot and then have some funds available should we continue to see that success. So I see no reason why we shouldn't continue to do that and not promote. I think the payoffs for us are going to be a lot bigger than what we put into this later on, and it'd be good to have those resources available to continue some of that success. So I also support adopting the report and not adopting the amendment. I think that makes sense. So thank you.
Mr. Alarcon.
The committee report says that the money would be reclassified. What happens to the money? I mean, the 200 and whatever and change. What happens to that money?
Under the original under the committee report, it's my understanding that it would stay in that account and be available for whatever action the council takes with it later, be it making it available for this program or moving to the reserve fund, but it would stay available for this purpose under the original report.
But
it wouldn't be swept.
I don't understand by classifying, I mean, I'm not understanding the accounting process to just say that it's reclassified as revenue. That doesn't actually say that it's dedicated for that purpose.
No, but my understanding is it would stay in that fund, which would make it available for this purpose rather than sweeping it into the reserve fund. That's the only difference.
It stays in the billboard enforcement fund?
In the fund where it exists now, which I think is a CD5 fund, a special fund that was created to receive these monies.
Okay, is that correct, Mr. Kretz? It stays in the CD5 special fund?
The 252.
It would stay in the fund where we found it to be ideally used again later for continuing billboard enforcement if this 6-month pilot works out as well as we expect and has a significant multiplier effect in terms of the funds that the city brings in from it.
Well, why don't we just dedicate it for that and just say that? I mean, the report is a little ambiguous. It doesn't make it clear. To sweep the money back into the general fund doesn't create the incentive to really establish a program. What's going to happen? At the end of 6 months, you're just going to kill the effort, as opposed to if you have the money allocated or dedicated for that purpose. So I would offer an amendment to the committee report. I think it's a friendly amendment, but it specifically says that all the money is dedicated for this program, but that the city attorney would have to come back in 6 months to release the second portion and report on their effort at that point. Then it would have to be approved again. But that way it wouldn't go into the general fund. It'd stay within the current fund, but it would be clearly identified as an incentive to continue this program if it's successful. So I would offer that as an amendment. Do I have a second?
I'll second that amendment. I can't guarantee that it has 8 votes, but I think that would be the most desirable.
Since it was put forward as a friendly amendment, is there any objection first? Okay, there's objection, then it will just be on the table as an amendment from Mr. Alacon. Yes. Mr. Parks just objected? Sorry? I know. It is a shocking thing that someone objected to one of your motions, Mr. Alacon. We will launch a party to inquire as to why and what logic was used. Mr. Labange is actually next. Mr. Parks, we've got a number of people for the first time. Mr. Labange, Mr. Rosendahl, Mr. Krikorian, Mr. Smith. Mr. Labange.
What's happening in other parts of the city of this action?
Billboard action?
Yeah.
We have billboard cases throughout the city, primarily in the Hollywood and the Central City.
But you would recommend, let's say in the future, would you want this type of arrangement? As far as
in terms of the money was generated through a billboard enforcement action that occurred in Westwood, one particular building back in 2001, and as a result of that, money was generated and placed into a special fund. We were not part of that, but during the course of our billboard enforcement efforts, we found this money. We saw this money was available, and we've been communicating.
You mean the previous city controller and the current city controller didn't find that money?
Apparently not.
Wow.
And we looked at it. We saw that it was specially designated for CD5. We discussed this with various members of the council, and the money was generated through billboard enforcement. So the city attorney's office position was that there should be a nexus to billboard enforcement or sign enforcement, billboards, super graphics, digitals, whatever it is relating to billboards. It should have a nexus. That's how the money should be used, because that's where it came from.
Well, members, here's the thing that I have. Mr. Alacon at his district has the Lopez Canyon, from its challenges in the past, has a special fund dealing with community issues. I know there's an oak tree ordinance that deals with oak trees that are removed in a certain region of my district, goes into an oak tree fund. This seems to make some sense that if it's an impacted area, which the tall
Tall Walls, is that the name of the company, Tall Walls, or is that what they used to call these things?
Yes.
Tall Walls, that may make some sense, but I also understand Mr. Parks, maybe the CAO could come to the table and help me here, CLA, what Mr. Parks is saying, but at the same time, I think there's certain parts of the city that have impacted areas, so if there's a balance of share, I think that's important. Mr. Miller, what are your comments?
Well, clearly it's up to the council on what it wants to do with the fund, but for point of clarification, this is a holding account that money was deposited into as a result of a settlement. It's not restricted to CD5. The reclassification, what that meant was that the balance of the funds would go into the reserve fund. So that is Mr. Parks' proposal. So the PATA program funded with, $360,000 a year would go forward, and the balance of the $600,000 at this point would go into the reserve fund. Now, obviously, at the end of the pilot period, if you want to continue it, then through the normal budgeting process,
So
the council can appropriate funds.
a certain percentage will be going to this fund, and the other percentage, or 100%, goes to the reserve.
About 360 would be used for the program. Mr. Parks' proposal is that the balance get moved to the reserve fund, and at the end of the pilot program, if you're going to continue it, certainly then the council can reappropriate the money. It's general fund money in essence.
I got that. And then the other thing, just to finish up, I could understand that because we all have certain things there, but then if this is necessary for the general fund, what do you recommend, Mr. Miller?
The standard practice is settlement money goes into the general fund, and it's part of the normal budgeting process.
Unless it's previously determined. I don't know if there's a settlement at Lopez Canyon, or I know there was some settlement on the Oak Tree Ordinance and some of these other things, but I think these are things to look at. There was no settlement? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Kerkoyan.
I'm still trying to struggle for a little bit of clarity on this fund. Is it or is it not, is the money currently in a fund that's specific to CD5?
No.
Okay, I'm seeing one head shaking, one head nodding, so let's find out first whether...
Well, I'm going to defer to Mr. Miller. But in terms of the money is generated out of CD5, yes.
Okay. The money was generated from a settlement in CD5, clearly. This is actually technically not even a fund, it's an account. This is a holding account, and in fact, others have used this account to park money for a period of time until there was a determination of where it would go.
Okay, and the total settlement universe of $600,000 and some thousand, I think there's consensus among everyone that half of that is going to go to the general fund.
A little more than half.
Okay, so the question is that remaining half that's in this miscellaneous account now, whether that will be, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit at a loss of the difference of opinion here of what is going to happen with that other half.
It'll be swept into the general account.
General fund.
General fund.
Reserve fund.
Reserve.
As opposed to reserving it under Mr. Kretz's motion to possibly use that at the conclusion of this pilot program to continue the pilot program if it proves successful.
Yes. Yes, okay. Those are the two proposals.
All right. So now in the staff report...
And remember, this will continue to generate money. As this goes forward, more money will go into this account.
So the budget, let me finish my questions first.
Unless there's an action taken.
Let me finish my questions first, if I may, sir. Can I finish my questions, please? In the Budget and Finance Committee report, the recommendations simply talk about funding the city attorney's billboard enforcement efforts. There are several references in here to super graphics, but the recommendations themselves talk about billboard enforcement. So would it be the intention, as this pilot program continues, that money could be used at the city attorney's discretion to do other sorts of billboard enforcement as well against illegal billboards?
Yes.
And that might be in CD5, it might be elsewhere?
Elsewhere. Entire city.
Thank you.
And to clarify, Councilman, when I meant it still goes into the account, the agreement is still in effect. So the location at issue is still generating the money. And so unless there's some change Correct. So unless there's some change through the council or others, that particular site in CD5 will continue to generate money, and that will continue to go into that account unless we make a change. So there'll be more money in the future beyond 616.
No.
Well, in terms of this particular, unless the council makes a change, I'm not sure where it's going to go.
No. Can I explain this?
Mr. Smith is next on the queue. Mr. Corrigan's time is done, but Mr. Smith can ask you to explain. Or you can explain it. Mr. Smith.
Unless you're making the change, money from lawsuits goes into the general fund. You seem to think you're keeping it. This is not a law firm where the partners split up the money and get a success fee. The money from the city attorney's office goes to the general fund. Why? Because you're a function of city government. You're not a separate agency. You're not a separate law firm. You're a function of our government. And if you want to set a precedent where you start keeping money from your successes in court, then I would say let's start taking money away from you for your losses. I don't think any of us want to go into that realm. You are a function of our government. When you are successful, those monies go to the general fund, and they come back to support your office in the allocation process we're now calling the budget. We're in that right now. So I don't think that the city attorney should have to have incentives to go to court. It's your job. That's what your function is. That's what we task you with. You should not have to have an incentive to go win, because if you're becoming an incentive-driven, all the other stuff's going to become unimportant to you. Because if the only way you survive budget cuts is to get incentives by winning in court, then all the other things we do, and some of them not so well sometimes, like getting ordinances drafted by the city attorney, all that stuff becomes irrelevant. That is not what we should be doing. So giving them incentives to do their job is not right. Taking money away from the general fund is not right. It is traditionally gone to the general fund to support the functions of the city government, of which you are one of. And then we give it back according to the ability we have every year in the budget process to do that. And so I say Mr. Parks is on the right track. I think it's magnanimous that we're giving you part of that money for a time frame, because we think it's important what you're doing. And I would say to you as a member of the Budget Committee, if you are successful and can bring in some other revenues, we may as a Budget Committee consider keeping that funded. But for the time being, that is not how this government works.
If I may respond, since my office was attacked, what I would like to say is this, if I can explain this situation.
That was not an attack. As long as you're going to use my time to respond, that was not an attack. It was just a statement of the facts of the way it works.
Well, in this particular case, Councilmember, we found this situation, and we brought it to Councilman Parks' attention and Councilman Koretz's attention.
Thank you.
We saw this pot of money that was created long before we took office. We didn't draft that agreement, and we didn't create the fund. We saw this money going into this account. We approached the city council and said there's $616,000 in this account that was generated through billboard enforcement. So what do you want to do with it? We have some ideas. We are not looking at this as a continuing project, but the agreement is still in place, and that account is still in place, and the company that generates the money will continue to deposit that money in that account unless there's a change. We don't have a problem with there being a change. That's not what we're doing here. When we went to the Budget Committee, there were proposals on how to do it. One of those would be to have a pilot project that was suggested by Councilmember Parks. We don't have an objection to that. It's $363, and we are very grateful to use that money. Believe me, and I know the old phrase, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. We don't want to get slaughtered. So with respect to where the money goes from there, the only issue we have is this remaining $252,000, we think it should be designated for billboard enforcement. And that's how, because there was a nexus. That's up to the council whether or not to do that. But my other point is, we believe within the next week, another $1 million will come into this general fund, which will more than make up for the $252,000. And to the extent that that money can be offset for billboard enforcement, we'd be we'd be overjoyed with that to offset this. So we're not trying to get any money out of this other than what was already generated through billboard enforcement. And we have heard you loud and clear, and we definitely respect and will honor that position you take. But we're not acting like a private law firm. We're trying to save money and generate revenue to the extent we can within the confines of the council's direction. So hopefully we can better communicate that. And I apologize for any misunderstanding.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Fascinating. Do that pig thing again. I know the chickens come home to roost, but I've never heard that. What was it?
Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered.
Wow. Well, let's not get fat around here. Look.
And we don't want to be hogs. I can tell you that.
Obviously, I have a big billboard problem in my district. I had to go out with a group of community people and find 34 illegal billboards, 20 that have flipped to digital, that we have no revenue stream on it, and we've got the blight, we got the safety issue, we have all kinds of community issues about the billboard. And of course the money is equally divided among all 15 council districts. But there are about 4 or 5 of us districts that get nailed every minute of every day by some clever little game, and the previous city attorney, in fact, was unable to rectify a situation, number one. Number two, Carmen Tutanich has been a straight shooter and a hardworking guy, and all of you around him, and I'm very, very happy with the work you have done, even to get those damn super graphics illegally put on buildings. They not only are visual blight, but there was safety issues for people living in the buildings. And to hear that another $1 million might come in next week is also good news. But what Mr. Smith is basically saying, here's a pilot, okay? Here's $300 grand. And when you bring in more money, come back to us. But if we just let you have it, I mean, that sets a precedent in my mind, unless somebody can tell me something different here. Richard is nodding his head. Well, I want to hear what Richard has to say, too. If we're not, I just want to do 2 things. One, I want to deal with all the illegal billboards, and I want to make sure that compliance happens, revenue streams happen, and community gets its respect. I want that. At the same time, we have a general treasury situation now where we're laying off people, we're furloughing people, we're shutting down different kinds of things. So there's a balance I'd like to see. So I've not made up my mind again. I'm going back and forth. I'm trying to do what's right. So I might come back again, but I want to hear more of Mr. Alicon's head shaking what that means.
We did submit a letter to the under attorney-client privilege probably a month ago with revenue to the council for revenue generating ideas relating to billboards. We did submit that. If anyone needs additional copies, we can provide them.
Mr. Reyes.
Okay. Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, we live in a very complicated city. And I hear Councilman Rosendahl and Councilman Koretz, we talk about, and Councilman Krikorian. When you look at the city and you take a step back, you find that the large super graphics, the digitals are predominate in areas where the market feels they'll get the greatest amount of revenue given the demographics of that neighborhood. For colleagues in my district, I have the grand opportunity of getting these little stamp-size billboards. I mean, they fit in people's front yards. And they're in corridors that essentially, they're almost at eye level. They're literally up against a person's garage, the side of their house, because it's zoned commercial, but it's a residency. I've got corridors where these stamp-sized billboards essentially are making some money for the landlord, because usually the person living there is a tenant. And so am I going to get a piece of that action? I think not. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that this is a very complicated discussion, and these areas, like in my district and other parts of the city that have the same type of demographics, where 30, 40, 50% of our districts are at poverty, these unscrupulous characters who are putting up these posters, these stamp-sized billboards, are making money off of it. And it is a blight. But do I get a separate account when we shut those down and I get a piece of that revenue? Are we going to go there? I would hope not. I would hope that we can see ourselves as one city and that we do this in steps. Let's understand what this amendment does, but I would hate to get away from how we look at our general fund. You know, and I thank the city attorney for the hard work. I understand you did not create the account, and that you are looking at the tools that are in front of you. But if we start saying, my district gets hit the most, therefore I get to collect the most, is a path of, I think, self-destruction in many different levels. And again, let's let cooler heads prevail and understand what is best for the whole city, because we each have our problems at different levels at different times, but we should be looking at ourselves as one city. Thank you.
If I may, with respect to those postage size billboards, I can tell you in the last month we've taken down over 540 of those through our negotiations and enforcement actions, and we will be generating revenue on that particular matter. And again, we're open to how that money, or where it would go and how it would be used, but definitely that will be, these enforcement actions will generate a considerable amount of resources, or funds.
Thank you. We have, for the second time, Mr. Parks, Mr. Weezer, Mr. Alacon, Mr. Koretz, and Mr. Labange.
Thank you, Mr. President. In my several years here, this has been the most error-filled conversation I've heard. First of all, error-filled, not error. A lot of mistakes. Number one, this is not a fund or issue that's dedicated to CD5. It's revenue that came from a lawsuit in CD5. The fund that you're referring to, that's account, as Jerry Miller said, was a holding account. It was not a city attorney's account. The money was never lost, so you could not find it. It was in the city's general. Someone just did not move it to the reserve fund. All settlements go to the reserve fund, including the $1 million that you're talking about in the future. If you look at item number 1 on the committee report, it says, request city attorney to reclassify $616 million as revenue. All we were doing with this amending motion was clarifying the revenue was going $300,000+ to your pilot, and 200 was going to the reserve fund. So to say that that wasn't what the committee approved is an error. To say that that fund is yours is an error. And future funds that come into the city from this case or any other should go into the reserve fund. It shouldn't go to a holding account because we know where that money goes. Holding account was only set up when funds come to the city and you don't know where they go. We know where settlements go. And so these are things that we need to clarify, and this is money, maybe 3 or 4 of us have billboard problems. All of us as general fund problem. So the money is a general fund allocation. And I've mentioned this to you several times at the hearings. When you keep saying that this money or what you need these incentives, that's not the way the city operates. We don't give incentives unless you take on the responsibility of funding the positions, funding the losses, then we'll talk about incentives for the settlements. The settlements belong to the city because we pay tens of millions of dollars for you to operate. We don't negotiate the settlements back to the department, and we don't negotiate them to each individual district. So we need to get back on track and realize that general fund money is general fund money. We spend it for the good of everyone, and although there's 3 or 4 council members that do not like having super graphics, I'd love to have a super graphic. That means I'd have a tall building in my district. And so the issue is that everybody has to realize that we don't have the same problems.
They're available for homes if you'd like to wrap your home, too.
A home side. But we don't even have tall homes. I mean, so these are things that we have to realize that everybody's not suffering the same dilemma. And to start earmarking because an individual district has a unique problem. The other issue, Mr. Carter, when you brought this issue to us, we thought we did a reasonable compromise. And that reasonable compromise, because I had to convince Greg Smith, because he wasn't really supportive of creating this extra money. And so we got you the votes. To be here today, coming to council and saying you now want the whole amount of money, violates the confidence of saying, could you work out a deal for us? So that's my concern, that when you bring these things to us and we work the effort of getting you at least a portion of the money, to come in council and say, I like all the money, just kind of violates why we had the conversation. So you need to think about that when you come to us and say, can you help me? Because we tried to help you. The committee gave you a portion of it. You decided that was okay at the committee. Then you come to council and say, I want it all. That violates the whole purpose of going to the committee. And to come here today and say, all that money's mine, I found it, I want it, is in direct contravention of what we do here as a city.
If I may respond, Councilman Parks, I agree with everything you said.
You don't have to say anything else.
Except the last part. Except for the last part. I agree. When I came in here, I agreed with everything you say, and I agree with everything you say now. The last part, though, I don't. The city attorney is not asking for all this money. It's not our money.
Then why are you sitting there?
The point is, it's the designation, as we understood it, that the remaining $252,000 would be designated for billboard enforcement. Not that, as again, I truly appreciate having the opportunity to talk. I think there's been just a miscommunication, probably obviously on my behalf.
I agree with that.
And I am not here trying to take all the money, because it's not our money.
Mr. Carter,
It's just
read number 1 on the report. Number 1 says reclassify it to revenue, which gives a clear impression it's not there for continued enforcement of billboards. And so that's all I can say. Read number 1, and you know exactly what the intent of the committee was. And so to come today and say, I need the money for continued, and then to promise more money, that more money is coming into the general fund.
Our issue was rather it would be designated for a certain use, and that's all we're here to talk about.
The thing is, we gave you a pilot.
If I can
If that's not
ask you to press
sufficient,
your
then let
button
us
again.
know.
As much as it pains me to say so, I'd encourage you to press your button again.
Okay.
And I
If you'd like to
apologize,
say more.
Councilor, I apologize for any miscommunication, and again, we're not here to take money that's not ours.
We have 4 more speakers still in the queue. Mr. Wisar, now we have 5. Alarcon, Koretz, Labange, and Rosendahl. For a second time.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And let me say this. Yes, traditionally, the way the city has functioned, when we get settlements, they go into the general fund. Yes. But put that all aside. What we are doing today, really, is we're making a policy decision whether we want to fund further billboard enforcement. We do that all the time here. I would challenge each of my colleagues for the next agenda for this next week. We're always moving money around from different pots of money. And here, in my view, it so happens to be a settlement from other billboard enforcements. So we are making a decision today whether we want to move forward, a policy decision, get this money, and do continued billboard enforcement. That's what this really is. And there's nothing wrong with changing tradition, and there's nothing wrong with being creative when we have a successful program that is working, and at the end, it's going to get us more money later on by continued enforcement. It's going to be worth the small investment we make right now. So I'm telling myself, aside from all this other stuff that's going on here, whether it's for CD5, it's for the whole city. That's the other misconception I think here. It's not just for CD5, it's for all of the city. We all benefit. But putting all that stuff aside, I'm asking myself, from a policy perspective, do I want to continue to invest in this billboard investment that has been proven very successful and is going to get us money later on? It doesn't matter if it came from a settlement or not. And you know what? If there's another successful settlement on medical marijuana, and we then decide, hey, let's use that money for, enforcement for building and safety for medical marijuana, we're making a policy decision. It doesn't matter where the money comes from. That's what we're doing here. No one says, the Constitution does not say, none of our rules say, that we have to put the settlement money in the general fund. We do that. But we could use some of that money through an action by the council for a dedicated purpose, and that's all we're really doing here. We don't have to follow tradition. We don't have to say that's the way it's always been done. We want to support programs that work. And I certainly want to support a program that works to continue to take down these illegal billboards no matter where they are in the city, and that's what this program is going to do.
Mr. Wesson for the first time.
Move the previous question.
All right, is there any objection to that? Okay, as objection, we'll need to take a vote on that. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes, 3 noes.
That does carry. And that will close Sorry? Somebody from the prevailing side would have to, so Mr. Alacon, reconsider that. Do that again. Please open the roll.
Wait, my button's not working. Try this one.
It is working now.
It's not working.
Yeah, you're down as a no. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 5 noes.
Thank you, Mr. Weston, for the attempt. Mr. Alacon is next.
I'd like to move the no, I'm just kidding. Mr. Roosevelt wanted to know whether we set precedent or what the tradition is. The tradition's all over the map. The question is whether or not we can legally move this money, and the answer is yes, we can. We can do with it as has been suggested either way. It's a policy decision, as Mr. Huizar said. Whether or not we have taken funds from direct enforcement actions and placed them into accounts that benefit that kind of enforcement action, absolutely. Historically, we've done it many, many times. But we've also done the opposite, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you we do it all the time. The question here before us today is whether or not you feel that it makes budget sense for us to take the additional $200,000 plus and allocate it for billboard enforcement. That's it. I happen to believe that we are woefully inadequate in terms of our billboard enforcement program, and that it would be appropriate for us to dedicate this money that comes out of that effort toward that end. The only thing I would like to do is add an amendment to my own amendment, a friendly amendment to my own amendment, my own friendly amendment, and that is that in 6 months, the city attorney, before we allocate that $200,000 plus, come back with us. I'll wait for Sharon. The city attorney come back with a citywide enforcement program, not a CD5, because this money is not dedicated for CD5. It just happens to be emerging out of CD5 in terms of the money, but the program is not dedicated to CD5. So therefore, the program that the city attorney is talking about, this pilot program, actually should come back as a citywide program. So in 6 months, after you expend the $350,000 or $60,000, I would propose that the money stay in the account for the purpose of billboard enforcement, but that the city attorney be responsible to come back in 6 months with a report on a citywide enforcement program using that money.
Does that replace your previous motion?
It was seconded by... Do you accept the amendment?
Sure. Well, it has to be accepted by everybody to be friendly, so is there any objection?
If this is a friendly amendment, I would just point out that I think it's already what it is. This is a citywide program. I mean, this is, the money comes from
that's not what the amendment is. The amendment is to ask the city attorney to come back with a plan for what that city enforcement is, citywide enforcement is.
No problem with that.
Is there an objection? Any objection? If not, there's an objection? Okay.
Can I just hear it again?
It's to ask this, go ahead.
Just a plan?
It's to say, well, the amendment is to my amendment. In addition to the money that remains in the account for the purpose of billboard enforcement, as I've proposed and Mr. Koretz initiated, all I'm saying is that when they report back in 6 months before they get the second allocation, they have to come back with a citywide enforcement program proposal.
May I suggest then, if you're amending your own amendment, that we're already going to be voting on that amendment, we'll accept that as a clarification of what you'd like to move, okay? Is that all right?
I think on the Budget and Finance report, they're already asking for a 5-month report back.
So thank you for that point of clarification. Mr. Koretz.
Yeah, a couple of things. It's been clarified a couple of times, but just to make it very clear, the money is coming from a settlement in the 5th District. It's not targeted for the 5th District. In fact, I'm not arguing for this, but I'd be willing to do it excluding the 5th District. I think the money is well spent citywide. It's not intended to be focused on my district. It's intended to go after code enforcement and to bring back additional money that I think we'll get from that code enforcement. The other thing that needs clarification is I think the city attorney is being painted as looking greedy and asking for the whole amount. Now, I originally made the motion to take that whole amount. It was discussed in committee to make it a pilot program. But if it's a pilot program and it works well, where's the money going to come from? If we swept the rest of it into the general fund and it's competing with 50 other things, we're never going to get another penny. If we're really serious about code enforcement and we want to give a chance to see if this program works, well, we fund it for the second 6 months with the rest of that money. My understanding in committee was that we did what the committee report said. The city attorney isn't here arguing for something different than the committee report and something different than the deal I thought we made. They're arguing against a switch that should have been taken care of in committee. We never talked about sweeping the rest of this money. I never intended to sweep the rest of this money. We did all agree on what we would use the first chunk for. The rest of it, we must have been thinking different things at best. I thought it was pretty clear the rest of it would sit where it was. If the program worked, we'd put the rest of it in for the second 6 months. If the program didn't work well, we'd sweep the rest of it into the general fund. That was my understanding of this conversation, and that's coincidentally what wound up in the Budget and Finance report. I don't chair that committee. I didn't cause that to be in there, but that's what wound up in there, a reflection of what I thought we had decided. So why we're amending this after committee when we were all there and we all agreed to a deal, I'm not entirely clear on where this whole conversation came from.
Mr. Tom LaBonge is our next speaker.
Here's the other question I want to ask here. So we're in a little bit of a crisis. We could change policy every time, Jose, but I'm thinking, okay, there's the city attorney's office. They're trying to get what they want, is what they believe in. There's the financial chair recommending there's some money to still go forward with. Is that correct, Jerry Miller?
Yes.
And then there's somebody that goes to the general fund. So in that consideration, you have to weigh it out. We have to discipline ourselves in a way, which is something that we have to do in order to be successful. This is not the most important thing, Mr. Carter. The city attorney is going to come to us at the center table in the next 4 weeks. So I think we should do what the CLA recommended and vote for the recommendation and move on. I consulted, I read more material, and I heard what just Paul said, and I think it's what the CLA has recommended.
CLA, did you recommend it? You're neutral still, right? It's a policy decision.
I've explained your options. It is ultimately a policy
Thank you very much. Yeah, but if you talk to the CLA, if I talk to Avak, if I talk to Jerry, if I talk to Sharon, I could talk to Mike Hernandez, I could talk to anybody.
So they said that on the sidebar, but not up here.
No, only one out of the three did.
We will never take that away from you, the right to talk to anybody, Mr. LaBonge. Mr. Rosendahl.
Clear now. I'm just ready to vote. Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
I just want to understand a little bit of the process of enforcement. Does building and safety, how do they fit in this process? Are they part of this fund, and how do we implement the function? Is it going to be just with the city attorney's office, or I just want to understand how that's being viewed.
Currently, as we understand it, and as we discussed with the committee, there were a couple of options. One was to use that money to perhaps fund people from Department of from personnel or maybe building and safety that might have this expertise and use this money to prevent a layoff. Then it shifted to a potential using the monies to hire outside investigators at a lower cost to use them in conjunction with the Department of Building and Safety investigators. We are locked step with the Department of Building and Safety. They are critical to billboard enforcement, as you know, Councilmember, in all matters. As you also know, that their numbers are dropping. I think they're going to be down to maybe 83 inspectors citywide. So these investigators that we would hire during this 6-month period would be used to assist building and safety in reviewing records, taking photographs, interviewing witnesses, doing all the things that building and safety does a great job doing, but assisting them with manpower.
Well, in looking at what impact this program could create, I would ask, as Chair of Plum, to get report back from Building and Safety in your office to speak to that impact. If you can share the geographic distribution of both positive and negative variables that you see, so we can learn from this experience and see how we improve it. And looking at how staffing issues are being addressed and implementation. That way we learn from this experience and we can let it from a land use point of view and how we go through our assessment of, assuming by that point we're going to have other determinations from the courts and there'll be progress made at different levels, but how we're using that fund and how it impacts the city as a whole would be a report back I would ask as part of a friendly amendment in this process.
Department of Building and Safety have been great. They've done a great job, as you well know, that terrific people. There's just not enough to go around given the number of lawsuits we're facing.
Right, so that would be the focus of my friendly amendment. Do I need a second for that?
I'll second.
Thank you.
The clerk wanted you just to re-clarify what it was, if you don't mind?
To have a report back from the city attorney and Building and Safety on the implementation.
Okay.
And understanding the geographic impact and looking at both negatives and positives.
Is there any objection to that? If not, we'll accept that as a friendly amendment to whatever the final action is. Mr. Parks is the last man on the queue. It's his third time, and we call on him now.
I was just trying to catch up because I haven't been here for a while.
It's all right.
Jerry, could you do me a favor and look at budget finance report and look at number 1 and tell us what that says and what it means?
Well, it says request the city attorney to reclassify $616,000 as revenue. Essentially, all that means, and it's the way the budget works. Recognizing what the committee did is it recognized it as revenue. It goes to the general fund, and then a portion of it was reappropriated to the city attorney to do the pilot program. Essentially, that's all it is.
When Mr. Corrett says he wasn't aware of what the Budget and Finance Committee said, the fact that he signed this report, he was endorsing that it was created as revenue and then reallocated a portion to the city attorney's office.
Well, I mean
that's what the report
that's
says.
what the action is.
That's
Obviously,
what the
I
action
can't
said.
speak
So that was
to
discussed, that had to be discussed in committee in order to get that on the report. Is that accurate? Yeah. So the issue is declaring it, because people may not understand the wording, declaring it as revenue puts it into the general fund, reallocating it to the city attorney for a pilot, basically gives them the money for the pilot.
Yeah, to be clear, you can't spend money out of this account. So one way or another, it will either sit in this account or it will be counted as part of the reserve.
And number 1 also, by declaring it as revenue, places it into the general fund.
Yes.
Okay. And then, Mr. Carter, you came to us and said there was an error that these employees were not as needed, they were contract. All right, and we tried to clarify that in the motion, that they were contract. We also tried to clarify for people to understand what number 1 meant is what the board, what the committee already approved. So in effect, other than the term contract versus as needed, 4A, we could pull it back and approve and adopt the committee report, and it would do exactly what 4A is asking for. So there is no misunderstanding about what the committee report, it may be individuals not understanding, but clearly the committee discussed it. I made the verbal statement to sweep the money into the account because that was the intent. Now, if people didn't hear that or understand it, I don't have an answer for that. But the issue is the report clearly identifies what the actions are. And so the issue is, colleagues, the funds that will go into the general fund are monies that will help us close the gap for this year and not push this money forward. The other side, we asked for a 5-month report saying, tell us how successful, because we've heard all these promises, we heard what we could get out of it. We won't know that until they've implemented the program. When they implement the program, it pushes it into next fiscal year, and if we have those issues and we think it's a good program, we then can deal with it in next year's budget. The issue is we're putting money into this year's budget to close a gap, and that's the intent of this motion and the committee report. In fact, when Mr. Carter came to me, my first reaction to him was, we should sweep the whole thing because it's general fund money. And so we tried to work with you and give you a portion of what you requested, and this is something in which we probably in the future won't consider. because the issue is that we should have just swept the money and put $600,000 into the account as it should have gone from the beginning. And we'd ask the CLA to look into it as if there's future money coming into this account. It should go to the general fund without question. It should not be in an interim account because there's no misunderstanding of where this money should go, and that's why this account was set up for the short period of determining where money should be dispersed. And so, colleagues, I'd ask again that we move forward, that we clarify that these are contract employees, not as needed. But that
You're a minute
also-
over.
Did I go over?
Yeah, so we
Can I
encourage-
finish this thought?
We don't encourage you to press your button again, but that's the rules if you want to go. Mr. Smith for a second time.
We wouldn't want to change the rules.
Mr. Smith.
Call the question.
All right, the question has been called. We have two speakers on the queue. Anybody objecting? There's an objection from Mr. Kretz, so we'll vote on it. Please open the roll on calling the question. So calling question is ending debate. Whenever we say calling question, it's always ending debate. So yes vote is to end debate, no vote is to continue this scintillating conversation. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That goes through unanimously. So now we have in reverse order the Alarcon motion, Mr. Park's motion, and the committee report as moved by Mr. Kretz. Okay? Yes, we will make sure that those are restated. The Alarcon motion, as I wrote down, was all the money would go forward for the program, but the city attorney would come back in 6 months for the second portion and report on the first 6 months. But also was added to that, there'd be a report on citywide enforcement plans. Is that before they would get the money? It would require approval. It would require approval. Okay? Everybody clear on that one? Sorry, can you? Half of it would move right now, so 330,000. Okay? Please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
7 ayes, 6 noes.
That fails. Next we'll have Mr. Parks' motion. Everybody, that is to move 4A. Everybody have that 4A that's before us. That is to request reclassification of $616,000 as revenue, and with $252,000 of that transferred to the reserve fund, and move the balance into a contractual service account for billboard enforcement program. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 5 noes.
That is approved. So that would supplant the committee report. Sorry, and the rest of the committee, and then, okay, that amends the
Approved as
committee report.
amended.
So then we have the rest of the committee report before us. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All right, that is approved. I'm sure we'll reconsider that for more debate another time, but in the meantime, we have 2 other items, colleagues, or 3 other items. If we can go to the next one called special, please.
Item 13, called special for cards.
Okay, item 13, Dr. Clyde Williams. Would you like to come forward on 13? Congratulations on surviving.
Good afternoon. Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA. Sorry about it. It's better than bingo. So, illegal tree trimming. Is that something like super graphics? Enforcement. What is going on here? Because we're getting rid of most of the tree trimmers from the city services, putting them over in DWP. You can't enforce the existing protected tree ordinances. So why increase the fee? You know, effectiveness. You don't have the staff. You don't have the budget. You don't have the history. We had a 28-inch California bay tree chopped down in Northeast LA. We notified the city, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but it was done before anybody could get to it. Was there any penalty? No, because it just takes too much time to get it enforced. So having illegal tree trimming of supposedly public trees in the public right-of-way and remember that there's going to be some changes there, seems like it's unenforceable, or that it will be enforced on an arbitrary basis with perhaps punitive measures taken against people who blow the whistle on various things within the neighborhoods. So I would highly recommend oppose it. Don't vote this one in because you can't do anything with it, because even the protected tree ordinance, which has even bigger teeth, can't be enforced. So why change this one, especially if it's going to be arbitrarily enforced? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. John Walsh is our next speaker. After that is Arnold Sachs.
You can't wait out HollywoodHighlands.org. We wait to the end. Also, blogging at, or rather we are part of recallcityhall.org. Get your petition. It's always a pleasure to talk in front of the most Nazi-tolerant city council in America, especially about trees and about pruning. You do a hack job. Incidentally, I'm not just talking in front of the city council. Now I'm talking to the emperor of the city council, Mr. Antonio Villaraigosa. Is he in the building? He must be hiding. Okay, let me tell you about pruning. You do a terrible job on Hollywood Boulevard. Go in front of the free clinic and the building next door to see terrible pruning. What is the building next door to the free clinic east of Vine? That is the Museum of Death, and I apologize. It was somebody who looked like you, Mr. City Council President Garcetti. Apparently, it wasn't you in the Museum of Death. We invite everyone to the Museum of Death. We like to point out that I would like to apologize to Mr. Parks. His chair was swiveled the other way. All I saw was the back of his head. I thought he was sleeping. But then again, if you keep your swiveling this way, we will not think that you are asleep. Wait a second, I hear some noise. What is, the mayor is crouching under the lectern.
So if we can bring it back to pruning.
Freddy Krueger, he may spring out. Come on out, Antonio.
We can bring it back to tree pruning, please?
Wait, stop. He's tickling me. Stop that, Antonio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh.
There's HollywoodHighlands.org. Get out of there, Antonio.
Arnold Sachs is our next speaker.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. Very quickly, Mr. President, you don't have a card on number 12?
I don't know. There's no card, or it already been voted on before we got that card. I do not have a card on 12. I'm
really,
sorry.
I thought I put a card on number 12.
On 13, and that's it for you. 12 was continued. I'm sorry, they informed me.
12 was continued. Thank you. I was going to ask about the illegal pruning. Since the city doesn't have the maintenance program, the manpower anymore, will the public be able to initiate a reverse REAP program against the city, where they go out and hire somebody to trim the trees legally and then charge the city for that function, because the city in and of itself is not going to have the personnel to do it. You seem to have this REAP program where you charge the property owners amounts of funding to clean up property or gate property or the such. So I was wondering, will the public be able to, since they'd be penalized if they illegally trimmed them, will the public be able to hire a certified arborist, have the trees trimmed, and then send a bill to the city Department of Public Works, Department of Street Services, a Bureau of Street Services, which would be the proper agency that the public would communicate with in order to find out prior to acting what would happen, so that they could find out who to send a bill to. Thank you.
Thank you. Interestingly, that's many people do, and they can get those permits, Mr. Sachs. It is not the city's legal necessity to maintain those trees. We have the right-of-way on the streets, which is why we maintain a standard, and people need to, if they want to do their own pruning, get permission from the city, but like sidewalks, those are technically the property owner's responsibility. The city does that as an additional service beyond any legal need. Mr. Huizar?
The City Attorney's Office here on this matter? So this item is similar to a previous motion that had requested the City Attorney's Office to come back with an ordinance to effectuate what's in the motion. Where is that ordinance? When can we expect it back in council?
Ted Jordan, Assistant City Attorney. I don't have the information in front of me about where exactly that ordinance is, but as soon as I get back to my office, I will look into that and try to track that down. Okay. It's just a matter of staffing and resorting some of the assignments within our office. Okay. But I believe that ordinance was in process. I just need to track down exactly where it is so that we can bring it back to you as soon as possible.
Okay. And so I guess through the Public Works Committee, we will make that request as an official request to see where that ordinance is, since there's been a motion in the past and just kind of follows up on that, and we know it was in the process, we just haven't heard where that is. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
As approved. Item 14, Mr. Walsh, would like to come forward on 14? And let's take 14 and 16 together, if you don't mind. You have those two last cards on both those, so if you want to give your comments together, we'd be happy to hear them on both items.
John Walsh, America's Least Wanted, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. 500,000 visitors since September 3rd, 2009. And, of course, at Don't Miss, recallcityhall.org. We're very interested in, I can't believe this, you are going to name a parking structure after a minister, a man of God? I'm politically incorrect. I'm politically correct. Parking structures are evil. Cars are evil. We should build huge rail systems that are hardly used and cut the bus system. Now, in New York City, where I came from, when I used to talk like this 40 years ago, then I came out here and I lost my accent. In New York City, because of abuses of Tammany Hall, they passed a law that stands to this day. Nothing gets named after anybody who's still alive. Okay? And that's what I'm asking for you. Let's pass an ordinance so no more. No, I'm sure that the Reverend Howard Toriumi was a nice person, but let's find something better for him than a parking structure. I'm sure he's a wonderful person, and we should not in any way dishonor him with. And incidentally, on my website, when you wanted to do an above-ground station at MTA at Little Tokyo, the Congress, Daniel Inouye, wrote a letter, which the press didn't cover, opposing it. I put it on my website, and it was picked up, our website, all over America. And guess what? He said, you're not going to evacuate us from Little Tokyo twice. And guess what? There is no more planned light rail station above ground. On the next...
hold on one second.
Item,
go ahead. Yeah, item 16 is the other item that you had a card in?
Okay, this is another item, HollywoodHighlands.org. This is another item about changing the name. Okay, originally...
And we just have 1 minute for this.
Cesar Chavez, I know. Oh, he's already trying to change it. Cesar Chavez was Brooklyn Avenue in East L.A., and it was Sunset. Now, I thought it was a great idea. Let's just change it to Cesar Chavez. Now, instead of Cesar, they're changing it again. Brooklyn, Sunset, Cesar Chavez. Now they want to call it Paseo Luis Alvarez. I don't know who Luis Alvarez is. I don't know, but he's not as famous as Cesar Chavez, and I think this is a dishonor to Cesar Chavez that we're going to polka dot the entire Cesar Chavez Avenue with different names of people who somehow have friends up here at City Council. If you don't agree with me, damn, the mayor's still crouching under there. And incidentally, the mayor comes with the dragon if you want him for parties. It's $25,000 he entertains. HollywoodHighlands.org. Come on out.
Mr. Weezer.
President, colleagues, I rise to speak on behalf of number 16, which is to rename a small street next to Our Lady Queen of Angels, which is the Placita Church near Olvera Street, between Main and the Upper Street. And Mr. Walsh, having listened to you a number of times when you come in here and listening to your political views or your views on the world, I think you would agree that Father Olivares is deserving of this recognition. This is a street that did not have a name when a parking lot was expanded, but they named it after the adjacent parallel Cesar Chavez Street. So the existing Cesar Chavez Street that's parallel to this one will continue. And I was approached by the current priest at this church and a committee that was set up to name the street in honor of Father Luis Olivares. He passed away on March 18th, 1993. He was 59 years old. He declared, while he was a pastor at this church, a sanctuary for El Salvadoran refugees in 1985, which was not a popular decision with our federal government at that time and many others. And also, he also led, that action also led to some tension within the church. But as you know, civil war was taking place in El Salvador. At that time, people were disappearing, and many Salvadorans fled to the U.S. fleeing for their lives. In declaring his church a sanctuary, Father Olivares said he was simply following his conscience and his moral convictions. He was a hero to many people, and certainly deserving of having the Paseo named in his honor. And so the Placita Parish and the Steering Committee of Paseo Olivares wanted to recognize, preserve the legacy of Father Olivares on the anniversary of his passing. According to the Bureau of Engineering, the small one-way street next to Placita Church, located between Spring and Main Street, has no historical value. So not only are we honoring a great man, we will also help eliminate the confusion that people have with a small street. Father Olivares made a significant and lasting contribution to the lives of many while serving at the old Plaza Church. And given the fact that we are once again calling for immigration reform, which at the end of the day is about treating human beings like human beings and not criminals, it makes perfect sense to honor a man who spent his life doing just that. Father Olivares' dedication to his parishioners is legendary, his kindness lasting, and his compassion unmatched. So I ask for your support in naming Paseo Luis Olivares in his name. Thank you very much. Mr. Walsh, I will talk with you afterwards to see if you approve of this after learning about Father Olivares. Thank you very much.
Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, I did know Father Luis Olivares, and I can tell you he was a champion of human rights, was a spokesperson for many on world issues that affect the people of Los Angeles. Because we are a society of immigrants, I have no doubt that John Walsh would support the naming of this small street that is interestingly somehow named Cesar Chavez, named after Cesar Chavez. I was the chairman of the committee that actually named the street Cesar Chavez, so I'm familiar with it. But the street has a long and interesting history, and this particular segment is adjacent to the church where probably millions of primarily Mexican and Mexican Americans have been baptized, including myself and many of my family members. So this is a very special tribute to somebody who was a personal friend, who I admired greatly as a humanitarian, somebody who dedicated his life to causes not just on immigration issues, but also he was a champion on the AIDS issue, and was way ahead of the curve on most of these issues. He was usually politically correct 5 years after he took on the movement. And so he was a great man. He deserves more than just a street. He deserves us. He deserves our thoughts and prayers. He certainly was a mentor to many.
All righty, let's open the roll on both 14 and 16. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are both approved. Next order of business, please.
Council has motions for posting and referral,
Those are posted and referred.
and there are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Perry requests to leave at 11:45 on Wednesday, May 19th for city business, and this meets council policy.
All right, that meets policy, so the excuse is granted.
Councilmember Cardenas requests to be excused on Wednesday, June 16th for city business. This meets council policy.
Mr. Cardenas is excused.
Councilmember Smith requests to arrive at 11:30 on Wednesday, May 5th for city business. This meets council policy.
Mr. Smith is excused.
And the desk is clear.
All right, any announcements, colleagues? Mr. Parks?
President, I'd just like to advise the community that lives in and around or travels around the Expo line that there will be Monday through Thursday closures, and also that's midnight, Monday through Thursday. Also that on Fridays, 11 a.m. to 9 a.m., Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. So just for traffic, and also aware of the Expo line construction.
All righty. Any other announcements? Yes, Mr. Rosendahl.
Fire Station 63, which is the Venice Fire Station, is having their annual fundraising event, a pancake breakfast on Saturday morning. And so people in Venice, please come by, have pancakes, and support the fire station. Secondly, the mayor is going to come into the district on the Mayor's Day of Service. He's going to go to the Bayona wetlands and plant some flowers that make sense there. And then he's going to go to the VA, where I'll join him there as well, where we're going to be talking about veterans and what needs to be done. Then those who get involved in the Mayor's Day of Service, there's a luncheon at our West LA office location here in the park in front, which is Corinth and Purdue on Santa Monica Boulevard. So if you have time this Saturday, come on out and do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labange, and then Mr. Parks again, and then Ms. Hahn.
Yeah, I just wanted to put a shout out
Mr. Labange and Mr. Parks. Yep.
for Big Sunday.
Yep.
David Levinson, a congregant at Temple Israel in Hollywood, one of the oldest temples in the city, came up with an idea, and it's now a Saturday and Sunday event where there's ideas of helping people throughout the city. They have a beautiful poster which has a handprint of people helping with a map of the city and a heart in the middle. If you see it, it's worth seeing for Big Sunday. So if you want to get involved, go to BigSunday.com and volunteer. Every day is a blessing, but help others out. We'll make it even better for others.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. You're just saying Budget and Finance will begin right after?
We'll start at 1:30.
1:30. Okay, Ms. Hahn?
I wanted to invite everyone to the harbor area, to San Pedro, where we're in the midst of our LA Harbor International Film Festival, which your friend Tom Labange, Stephanie Martich produces and makes sure it happens every year. Tonight, they will be showing a Polish film, Born of the Sea, and it's a story about work, friendship, love, hope, failure, and success centered around building of the port town in Poland. Then tomorrow, Saturday, at noon is Captains Courageous, and tomorrow night will be the Port of Los Angeles premiere. It will be featuring the Flower Drum Song, and it will be honoring the Golden Globe winner Nancy Kwan and James Shigeta from that movie. So everyone, come on down to the Warner Grand Theater in San Pedro tonight, tomorrow Saturday at noon, or tomorrow night to see the premiere of the Flower Drum Song.
Thank you. If there are no other announcements, do we have any adjourning motions today? If I can ask everybody to please rise in council chambers for our adjourning motions. Thank you, Mr. Labange.
Members, when you live to be 98, that's a blessing. And then when you have the life that this person did, is a greater blessing. Ruth Nussbaum was a great woman who survived the Holocaust, who came to Los Angeles, who owned a house with her husband on Hollywood Boulevard which then later became Temple Israel, which I just spoke about in Big Sunday. She was just remembered in life in a service by Rabbi John Rosegrove of Temple Israel as perhaps the most remarkable person that he has ever known and a historic figure of our conscience. I ask we adjourn in memory of her greatness and all the work that she has done for Temple Israel, for the Zionist movement, and many, many, many things. A great woman.
Thank you. Are there adjourning motions? If not, Mr. Alacon.
So we adjourn in the memory of Alexander Brooks. This young man was killed in Mission Hills, the result of a hit-and-run accident. He was struck by a vehicle going westbound on Lassen and into the way of another car coming the other way. The first vehicle took off, the second vehicle stopped and called for police assistance. Alexander died at Holy Cross Hospital, Providence Holy Cross, shortly after that. He was a graduate of James Monroe High School. He was a very talented musician and was about to start at the Musicians Institute College of Contemporary Music in Hollywood after completing his first year at Los Angeles Mission College studying business. He was a hip-hopper. In fact, he reminds me a lot of my second son, who's a struggling artist, working. He actually built a studio out of the stairway in his home and lined it with McDonald's cups. There's a very touching story in the Daily News that talks about his commitment. He wanted to donate his organs. He had told his twin brother that he wanted to donate his organs. Unfortunately, because of the investigation, that was not possible. And so he was not able to do that, but it demonstrates who he was as a human being. He, last year, lived in the summer months in a music studio where he was working to improve his skills and to work with studio musicians and learn how to lay down tracks and all the other things, mixing and all those things that hip-hoppers are doing. He taught himself how to play the piano and guitar and other instruments. A very talented young man. It's so sad that he was struck by a car and was taken at the young age of 19 years old. If anybody has any information about this, please notify the Valley Traffic Division detectives at 818-644-8020. He leaves behind his loving grandmother, his mother, his father, who had just reconnected with the family after essentially being raised by a single mother. In fact, his first song, called Never Fall, was actually a tribute to his single mother raising him, and he also leaves two brothers and many other family members and friends. May he rest in peace.
Thank you. Any other adjourning motions? If not, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll? And we'll be next in session on Tuesday at 10 a.m. here in the John Farrell Council Chamber.